It starts with a simple question and ends in objective reality. Through our journey from there to here, we find one another and ourselves. And as the next 24 hours breaks free from our last, we gaze onward in reflection of the day.
Come to your own conclusions. Just stay vigilant.
Welcome to the Daily Wrap-Up.
Sunday, July 13th, 2025. Thank you for joining me today. The chaos continues. Answer yesterday's question? Yes. Yes, I think it is. Or rather, what was the framing of it? Is this the end, or rather, is this the final death blow or death throes? Is the state? How's it go? Death throes, I believe, of the two-party illusion. I believe we're beginning to see this actually happen. I believe we're at the moment where more people than I've ever seen are beginning to genuinely question whether we're all being played by the simple idea of the political parties, maybe even a little further, and maybe voting is not what we think it is, even though in a representative government, it is paramount if being forced to live in a state of society. The question is, are we actually going through these? Are we being played? Are we being, the whole shadows in the cave dynamic? Or is it false binary? I think people are genuinely asking these questions. But what I was thinking yesterday when I think I was online talking about this is it doesn't mean it's over, we won. And it almost never goes in that direction. The point is that we have these moments of clarity where we can capitalize and we can influence people and we can change for the better. But the power structures, the people that want to take advantage, will always find a way to keep pushing their lies and spin it in their direction. That's my point about the whole yin and yang dynamic, that ultimately this is never-ending battle of good and evil that's always going on. That's what we're here to do, is fight for what we believe is right, fight for what's good. And what I'm seeing, though, is one of these moments that I do think is very rare right now. And it's whether it's because of clumsy actions of the partisan sides, whether it's because our government's being overtaken by outside powers, whatever it is, it's very clear that more people in the partisan field, like the mainstream level, are challenging not like the classic ideas, not the conspiracy theories, but they are challenging the line of their party. That's the thing that I find most interesting, most different, that they are. Trump will say something, the leading GOP or DNC, whatever the side of the partisan game we're talking about, the people on all sides of these things seem to be challenging the core line coming from their party. And I think that's a very profound and positive step. And like I said, people will be pulled back in based on the next event, based on the next election. But I think every moment we go through these, more and more people fall off of this. And I think that's why things have gotten so chaotic, because people are just tired of going back through the same thing. Now, we have the Trump administration, and really, again, my opinion, just the U.S. government, regardless of what paradigm, partisan side is in position, the U.S. government is now trying to convince you, for whatever reason, and we'll go through the additional things from going off yesterday's show, why they're trying to force in such an egregiously ridiculous lie that the Epstein files suddenly don't exist. Or, and that's not even to say that they necessarily, I do very clearly believe that there's a lot more than they're not giving you, but the argument is not necessarily that has to be that has to be the lie. The point is they've been telling you something the entire time that is now proving out, based on what they're telling you, to not be the case. So they either lied then or they're lying now. And I think it's one of those moments I'm talking about where people are just not okay with that. They don't know how to reconcile that with everything else that's happening. But to come out now and tell you the Epstein files aren't there, or rather that they were now altered by the Democrats to frame them or frame Trump or to hide their guilt. All of these things are certainly possible, but evidence is what matters, right? Not the floating the idea of whatever makes it make sense for you, which is what a lot of people are grappling with. What is the narrative that makes this make sense? Now, that very well could be the true narrative. But unless there's evidence to back that up, we should only be addressing what we can prove, which is that they're lying to us, that something's being covered up, or that they were lying before and now they're being forced to change it again. But it's an important moment. We're going to go over that update, but we're also going to talk about a couple of other stories that are happening. We're going to follow up on what's going on in Gaza, but a really important development coming from the USAID overlap. A former DOGE employee who's now the acting director of the USAID, the thing that supposedly destroyed and disappeared, except it didn't. It continued on, just like we told you. And now this is a perfect example of why and how it's continuing on, just like it was before, using whatever narrative they currently have. Now, in this case, rationalizing, despite all the laws, despite all the different pushback from every agency and every group, circumventing all the legal realities to give $30 million to a Mossad-funded humanitarian foundation that's executing Palestinians every single day on live TV. And the point is USAID, the larger point is genocide, but the idea being that there's just nothing is changing. It's just a different narrative, a different slant. Now, we're also going to talk about a really important overlap with Israel, SpaceX, XAI, and Twitter, Elon, and the overlap of all of that with Epstein and how it's all happening. But to start with an interesting point about SpaceX overlapping with Space Force and building out what Derek's already really was way ahead on the story of the National Reconnaissance Spy Satellite Network. Just, you can't hide is the statement he gave, because we have eyes everywhere, and Elon's using his AI to help build this out. Well, now that overlapping with SpaceX and Space Force is working alongside Israel to launch their own satellites, for good things and positive, not to spy on Americans or to invasively cover. I mean, there's 1,000 reasons why this is concerning to me, not just because of the worries of what we know Israel is doing with every tool that it has, but the fact that it's every moment becoming more immersed, more overlapped with everything that is in the U.S. Let's just put it this way, everything that is the lives of Americans. Because it's not, for me, it's not that I care. Let's put it this way. I don't care about the government. I wish they wouldn't exist. But when another foreign government infiltrates that government, which then directly affects your lives, well, then yes, I very much care about that. So we're going to discuss how all that's continued to play out. And of course, the title today didn't discuss the Epstein point. But as we keep trying to show people, we talk about a hell of a lot on this show that's not included in the title. That's why we do, deep, long-term, conversation, investigatory research, because there's so much more than just a headline, as always. But we're going to start today with a couple of points that I wanted you not to miss that aren't necessarily in line with everything we're discussing today, and points that are partisan in nature, or rather the lies coming from the government, which is no different than Biden or Trump. They're always lying to you to achieve their ends. It depends on what flavor you think they're acting from. Now, Daniel McAdams points this out. We've all probably already seen this. This is from S.L. Canthan saying Trump is Biden 2.0 when it comes to the Ukraine war. Trump has no choice. If Russia wins, it will be a devastating blow to the prestige of the U.S. empire and NATO. Now, whatever you think of her framing of that, or him or her, I'm not familiar with the account. U.S. has resumed military supplies to Ukraine, Zelensky says. Now, even Lindsey Graham came out going, it's basically saying that they were going to be flooding them with more weaponry. The point is, it's already continued. The narrative this was going to be ending on day one is obviously not the case. Sure, things happened, like we all told you was probably the case, like I said back then, and shouted down by partisans for claiming it wouldn't be done on day one. The point is that it's not stopping, it's continuing. Arming is continuing, just like we told you, because this is a larger agenda. It's the claim of trying to end this was a token that was used to get people to support him, in my opinion. Daniel says the peace president is actually an even crazier version of Biden. Be afraid. Now, whether you agree with that or not, it's not whether you frame it versus the same. It's about the claim and what's continuing. They're still supporting the neo-Nazi elements that they've created over the last couple of decades to use against Russia and all the different narratives we've gone over, the Azov movement, Israel funding of them. There's a much larger, grander thing at play here. And the small point within it, he lied to you about this to keep that going. On top of that, another major important deviation, like we were telling you. I mean, it's almost getting tiresome to keep saying, like we said before. The point, Trump wants to remake FEMA, not eliminate it. Cristian, no, that's not to say that maybe you think that's a good thing. Maybe you never thought it should be removed. The point was the claim of removing the Fed, getting rid of the IRS, getting rid of FEMA, USAID. And instead, what do we tell you? Probably not. Probably just a reimagining of those things, a slight change in the direction of what the Republican side really wants at the moment. Not in any way getting rid of those things. So think about that. How the lies continue to perpetuate. On top of the fact that we haven't got a shrinking government. We, as we should all know, got more spending, larger government, which is what anybody paying attention was largely already saying, because that's what always happens regardless of the partisan narratives. Pay attention long enough, this continues to go in the same path. That linear projection, the linear continuation of agendas that I'm always talking about. Through administration to administration, the main things continue going in the same direction. But as Sense Receptor points out, before we get into the SpaceX overlap, but this is one quick point about the Epstein ahead, simply saying, still blows my mind that MAGA is destabilized by Epstein, which everyone is seeing right now, and Israel, but not the death jabs Trump 1.0 launched on America. It's an interesting point. I understand why this is the topic that's really breaking this down for so many reasons. But the idea that not because the COVID-19 discussion is such a gigantic, massive psyop, just goes beyond what I think we even understand right now. But that was a major part of it, but also just the idea that it was something, there's so many moving parts to it that overlap with the military, with biological, like bioweapon stuff, with nanotechnology, and the idea that this can be so very clear that everyone is so, from the Republican side, and rightly so, see this as a problem, and yet Trump can still tell you it's a good thing, can still claim these things are saving lives. And that's not the thing that trips this up. It's a great point. It doesn't make much sense, but he says he maimed and slaughtered his own people en masse, including babies. Even as the late 2024, he lied and said the jab saved hundreds of millions of lives. He's still saying that as far as I can tell right now. But here's the clip, just to remind you that it's more than just the things in front of you right now, as always.
Do you think that maybe they were approved too fast? And in hindsight, based on what we know now,
why? What is the deal with every video that I don't understand the audio out of sync in these things? Anyway, not that I need to stop it to tell you that. It's the technocratic world we live in, I guess. I can bring up the video right now on screen share and show you that it's playing perfectly fine from my end. And some of them do, some of them don't. I don't get it. Maybe it's Twitter doing that to the download or however this works. But let's keep going. Sorry for the out of sync audio with the video.
Too fast, and in hindsight, based on what we know now, what would you have done differently?
Well, I think they're doing studies on the vaccines, and we're going to find out, and it'll come out one way or the other.
Yeah, those are the things they already pretended they did, and they're telling you, McCary and I forget his name, through the FDA are now telling you that they're safe. They said they're good. They studied them. Look, they're safe and effective. Go back to bed. That is what they've been saying. And that's why they now rolled out yet another COVID shot for children after everyone in this movement said, please don't give us any more. Please take all of them away. They gave you more because they're listening.
But I really had a mandate to get vaccines done, and I got them done very quickly in record time.
Doesn't that seem familiar? Well, we got a mandate for vaccines? Did he? I don't remember you guys voting on vaccines. Did you guys see what they're doing is saying, I've got a mandate for whatever I decide to do today. You voted because you wanted whatever I decide today? No. The claim is that you voted for things that he promised. Same thing they're doing now. Now, how long until 5 more, we're not even a year in, but get a couple years in, the mandates for whatever they're doing then. Did they even talk about half this stuff? No. But it's very interesting to think about. A mandate for vaccines, you guys might want to start talking about how obviously not the case that is. And now think about when he says a mandate for whatever's happening. Is it a mandate that Kat Turner and Betty Johnson want? Or is it a mandate, or is it the mandate for, I'm saying that all wrong. Is it what all of you want? Or is it what a few of the screaming people at the top actually want? Or is Trump just saying that, or the team or the U.S. government is saying that whenever they need to do whatever they want? I just think it's worth pointing out that nobody actually wanted these things, but he tells you do.
The Democrats love it. The Democrats love it, and the Republicans don't. It's very interesting. The vaccines, they love it. I have a friend of mine who said to me, why don't you talk about the vaccine, what you did with the vaccine? He's a Democrat, but I'm sure he voted for me. He said, what you did was the most incredible thing that any president has ever done.
Do you really think that was that? It's worth reflecting on the video we just watched the other day where he's going, the countries are calling me saying, please, sir, please make a deal. And then that didn't happen. And it turned out none of them actually even did that. So yeah, people lie, guys, especially people like this, especially politicians.
You've saved hundreds of millions of lives all over the world. And this was just recently, very smart guy. He said, I don't understand why you don't talk about it. And I don't talk about it. But if you go to Pfizer, if you go to some of these companies, Yeah, don't forget Pfizer that Bondi used to work for, Pam Bondi. And then once she came on the administration, they dropped the investigation into Pfizer. I just talked about it yesterday. Have charts,
Miami Herald.
They have all sorts of statistics. And I say, why don't you release those statistics? Let people know. But I don't talk about it. I can say this, the Democrats would love to claim it. The Republicans don't want to claim it.
It's just wild. That was not that long ago. This was right before. This is 2024. Does anybody actually agree with that? I mean, what audience is he aiming this at? I just find that to be insane. So starting on that point to recognize what won't they lie about and scream into your face what you're supposed to think about what he does. I mean, that's what's going on with the Epstein file or the Epstein discussion with by the way, we discussed it at the end of yesterday's show. And today that's the major focal point. So yet again, if you watch this show, you're typically ahead of the story. The point is that the Bondi point that he put out on Truth Social, we're going to read it to you in a second. I mean, it's no, but the Republicans don't think that. And that's what's so wild. Not only that, they were telling them something different 30 seconds ago. Now it's that you should give up and forget about this because the Democrats lied about it. There's nobody intelligent that's pretending like this makes sense, unless they're blind followers of Trump. And they'll ignore their intelligence because they support Trump over anything else. Those exist. Now, before we get to the Epstein point, which is very clearly relevant, not just because of the partisan side, but because of all the moving parts around this that go much bigger than one man and even one country. But it's important to see how it connects to all the different aspects of this. Even the Epstein point that connects back to the biological aspect and eugenics and Harvard. There's so many parts to this, guys. This aspect of it relates to, just to show you quickly the article that Derek put out. This is from December 5th, 2024. I recently reached out to him to see if he wanted to do a follow-up on this because he was really ahead of the story. Now, this was public information. He's citing an article, and there's a tweet right here coming from the national, or they put out a YouTube video anyway. It doesn't get as much people put out YouTube videos from the government stuff that get barely any attention these days, which is interesting. But this is from the National Reconnaissance Office. They said, now you can't hide because you're constantly being looked at. That this is an actual, this is what we're looking at. That's the Earth basically. I mean, this is actually the video right here showing you from 2019 and then all the way to 2024 to 23 anyway. Look at that. That is SpaceX satellites. That's insane to me. That's Elon Musk and his company surrounding our planet with satellites. And the point is he's working with the National Reconnaissance Office at that time with Biden's administration, because apparently he was a pedophile deep state government employee. And then he moved over and starts fighting them. And now he breaks away and now he's not, whatever you want to make sense of that. The point is that it's all the government and they're all built in this around you. And now Israel is, I think always is playing a central role in all of this. Here's the new development. So this was back in 2024, the end of 2024, which was already going on. But there's another discussion. This is from June 18th. Space Force is contracting with SpaceX for new secretive Milnet SATCOM network. Now we're going to go into what that is. Before, take one step back to recognize that Israel is immersed in damn near everything in this government. This is from June 13th. Liftoff. Israel's first national communications satellite, Door 1, just launched aboard the SpaceX Falcon 9. Now, look, for those that want to pretend like there's no problem with what Israel's doing in the world, you can act like this is totally benign. The idea, I don't care if they're selling Netanyahu paper for his printer. The idea that you are literally talking about a person who's committing genocide publicly and laughing about it. They're doing TikTok videos, dancing about it. They're literally openly telling you what they're going to do with concentration camps. We'll get to it today. And then acting like it's okay to deal with this person is disgusting. It just shows you what the people are, whether it's Elon Musk, Donald Trump, Biden, or anybody else that is allowing this. They're either okay with what they're doing or they're sociopathic to the point where it doesn't matter. But so my point is the fact that they're even working with SpaceX should matter for somebody who cares about human life. And also that you're allowing a genocide committing monster of a government to put spy satellites over, to be used over everybody, including the United States. Built by Israel Aerospace Industries, this $200 million smartphone in space, they're calling it, will power Israel's strategic and civilian communications for 15 years. Okay, so let's just say that's true. You're talking about something that is able to power their strategic and civilian communications. By the way, that means intelligence on top of their communications for civilians for 15 years. So let's go ahead and consider all the other many things it's probably capable of if it's that much. It's $200 million sprawling piece of equipment, the 15 years worth of communication. Pretty sure it could probably also spy. My point in saying that is that's what all of them are doing. All of them. Very much including SpaceX, the United States government. They're spying on you and everything else they can. But now Israel either is stepping into it or already has been, and this is the physical evidence of that. This is why this is important to me. Well, as Max also points out, the next article we're going to get to, but Max points to this. Israel's most advanced communications satellite, which we're just talking about, successfully launched into space. And as Max writes, the Israeli, quote, communications satellite was launched from Cape Canaveral, Florida. Thanks to Elon Musk's provided SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket, Israel will now have more power to spy on the American and global population thanks to U.S. taxpayer support. Why are we even paying for that? How does that make sense to anybody? Why is it that Israel can just piggyback on whatever the U.S. taxpayer is doing? It's a good question. Let's see, everyone's calling this out right now. So the point is the overlap with SpaceX, then Israel being a part of this spy satellite network that they're launching above you. Now, this is where it gets especially more concerning. So if we know that SpaceX is a part of that massive thing, and they're now working with Israel to do somewhat the same dynamic, and also we know that Israel, in my opinion, at the very least, is completely in control, if not outright, dictating the result of our policy in this country. That means they can benefit from all the same things. I think I actually, shoot, I knew I was going to grab that. Oh, shoot, what was that? I'm not going to be able to find it now. Now, I just talked about this yesterday. The idea that Israel is now in a joint agreement with the United States government in all things AI. Actually, I probably can do that. If you don't remember, this is how you can do an advanced search on here. Let's see. See if it pops up. It should. I just put it out. Like, that's crazy. Oh, well. Well, okay. So the point was, let me just do this. That'll probably get something. Yeah, so here's what we're talking about. So I put out a tweet with the link to one of the articles I was referring to. But so this is recent. U.S. and Israel pledged to work together to unleash AI innovation. Now, that's a very benign way to frame it. What they're framing it as from Israel is they're collaborating in all things AI with the United States. They're in a joint partnership for everything AI. So what that meant was, let's not forget that now because of Palantir and AI, they're also committing genocide. They've removed all of the silos of information. They have access to everything about you. You right now listening, Israel's government has every single piece of data that the U.S. government has on you. That should terrify you when you know what's going on in the world. That's what's happening. So I think that's important to consider. Back to this point. If we know they have that kind of unfettered access, which has all become clear, asking yourself what this means, especially since we see them overlapping with the larger direction and pretty much everything U.S. government. Space Force is contracting with SpaceX for new secretive MilNet SATCOM network. It says the Space Force is contracting with SpaceX for a new government-owned, contractor-operated satellite communication constellation in low Earth orbit, or LEO, called MilNet, that eventually will be integrated into the service's grand plan for a hybrid mesh network, combining commercial and Defense Department satellites. Sounds like what Israel just did. A senior Space Force official revealed today. Significant because we've never had a DoD hybrid mesh network at low Earth orbit. So this is a new thing. Again, what Israel just did, this is the same conversation. So what we can all pretend these are two separate things, but why would they be? Why would that even make sense technologically, financially? I think you're getting my point here. MilNet, which has rarely been discussed publicly until now, comprises 480 plus satellites. Just this one dynamic. Weisler said, and they said that will be operated by SpaceX, but overseen by Delta 8 mission director who communicates to the contracted workforce to execute operations at the time and tempo of warfighting. So all that to say that that's run by Elon Musk company, who very clearly seems to be overlapped, not just SpaceX, but all things Elon or all things that we're talking about. And these are my opinions, mind you, other than the facts that we can see of all of the overlapping points of Israel with these things. My opinion being that they're able to influence and control the outcome of these things. Please question me, but do not question question everything, but do not ignore the fact that they are overlapped. I mean, we saw this during Elon Musk's brief tour in the U.S. government, even though technically even the courts say he's not out of the government. It's just you can see the influence there. And we're going to get to a couple points about that in a second. So, SpaceX, basically in control of one of the most powerful things we've ever seen. The network will use terminals created by SpaceX for its Starshield satellites being configured for military use, which whatever happened to the agreements that were out about no militarized space. I guess they just stopped doing that. My point is always, they never actually even cared about that. I don't even think we have the first. I've said it many times. We have no way to confirm what's actually going on up there. It's the Wild West, as far as I'm concerned, up in the space dynamic. For all we know, there's so much more going on. Why wouldn't there be? I mean, let's be honest. Why would they feel they need to tell you if they're building new things on Mars and the moon and whatever, or maybe you have a different opinion about all of that. I just think it's interesting to think how little we know about what they do in any context and how obvious it is that benefits them to do something like that, especially when they think they're doing it against other countries, battling to see who can get the first base somewhere else. It's interesting. And it says the Starshield terminals have more encryption than those sold to consumers for Starlink access. Now, several government and industry sources speaking on the condition of anonymity which I don't understand that in this context. I mean, I think you know my suspicions, said that the reason for the secrecy surrounding Milnet, meaning that we are Americans who are funding this, weren't told about this until it's being built around you. That seems to be concerning. That the secrecy up until now is that while the SSC is funding this effort, which was the make sure I don't get the right name here, the Space Force, Space System Command. So it's Space Force, which, by the way, just still sounds funny to me. I can't stop picturing the HBO joke they made about this, the Space Force. It just sounds like a joke. But even though it is Air Force and, it seems like it makes sense, but it just sounds like a joke. Where was it? So the point was that while Space Force is funding the effort, the actual contract is being managed by the National Reconnaissance Office. So this goes right back to what Derek was really covering about. This is what it was all really about. And again, this was publicly released, but it's interesting that so few were actually talking about this until now it's being overlapped with Israel and Elon Musk and SpaceX. And, now it's, I think, maybe there could have been more pushback, I guess, if it was covered earlier. And it says, and under it, managed by the NRO under its never publicly acknowledged contract with SpaceX. Yeah, why wouldn't they acknowledge that? Even though he speaks about it in that very video we just showed you. And it's for their spy satellite agencies. The low Earth orbit constellation of intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance satellites. This is what Israel and SpaceX and everybody else is doing. That should be concerning for us. And they're trying to keep it somewhat quiet, buried down in this article, and NRO and SpaceX not really acknowledging that they're doing it, but they are, and it's very clearly for a low Earth orbit, brand new, next generation satellite spy intelligence surveillance reconnaissance network. That should be terrifying. It is to me. Reuters first reported in February, I'll put as well, with what we know they're building. The technocratic control structure, the panopticon is being built around you with biometrics, and this is how it works, guys. This is how this is controlled, at least in one large part of it. Reuters first reported in February on the fact that the NRO had contracted with SpaceX for Starshield buses for its proliferated LEO constellation that the agency said in April numbered more than 150 birds. Cool. That does worry me about whatever this is really about. Now, are we going to pretend like this is not going to be about military? I guarantee you this is also about military action. Should they ever come to that? And what does that mean for people? There's a lot of... I don't think the government's really, truly consider ever interest of average people. Now, this is Orwell pointing this out. Wonder how it all links together with the article we were just reading. DD Geopolitics, Wall Street Journal, SpaceX to invest $2 billion in XAI. So now you've got the overlap into the AI aspect of it. But let's not forget, that's already become Twitter. Right? Because Elon Musk says he sold X to XAI. So now when you have all these it's not, you don't need to make more connections to show you that Israel is influencing this Twitter platform, but it's interesting to see how these things are all interconnected. And really the lie is that this was ever about social media, guys. This is about a lot more than that. So and by the way, let's not forget on top of that his XAI company is literally a DARPA program that ended right before he took up XAI or X and turned it into XAI and now sold it to each other. I mean, it's a one-step process. We were calling this out at the time. Quiet transition from DARPA's XAI to Elon's XAI. And let's not forget as well that BlackRock invested in XAI right before that happened, which weirdly Republicans don't seem to care about. And Censored Man also points out that the Elon Musk, when he was centrally, he seems to be pulled back a little bit from the whole thing, but he was on Twitter and actively fighting on behalf of Israel for a lot of propaganda purposes. He overlapped with CHEQ, which was literally flooding this platform with bots. Also, let's not forget this. I've talked about this many times, which, by the way, I just confirmed today is the same thing. Twitter still using Authentics. You don't remember what that is? It is a openly Israeli intelligence. It runs many of the Israeli intelligence programs. It's not, or involved with many of the Israeli intelligence programs, which we talked about in this show. And it's not a secret, guys. And if you go right now, as I just did today, to go through this, many different processes of Twitter, it still says you have to check to verify your identity. And it says, I consent to Twitter X, you and Authentics. Why is Authentics even involved in this? Using images of my ID and selfie, including extracted biometric data that they may store. They claim for 30 days, but we know how that actually works. For all we know, they keep for 30 days and they dump it into another server and they pretend like that counts. Now they still have it somewhere else. I mean, that's as dumb as this ends up getting. But this is happening right now on this platform. So you have an Israeli intelligence an entity that is stealing your biometric data under some claim they need to verify you, which they don't need that to verify your identity right now. You've got the overlap of all these different connections from CHEQ, but then back to SpaceX and XAI and all these different connected points to the larger kind of building apparatus around you. My concern is, one, that that's even happening, but two, that Israel seems to be infected through the entire thing. That does worry me. Oh, there's that, just the article in case you want to see that as well. SpaceX to invest $2 billion in XAI. Must be nice to just kind of funnel your money around between these different companies that you own. Now, Elon Musk, to bring it into the Epstein point, on the this was yesterday, after talking about this, which I think it's worth reading this through again, just so you can, if you haven't seen this, to truly see what Trump just put out, which only today is really kind of breaking through a lot of people's conversations. We read it yesterday at the end of the show. So this person who I'm not familiar with, it's Shibetoshi Nakamoto. And this is, 2 million followers. So it's clearly a gigantic account. Simply said, this is the running for worst post ever made about Donald Trump's post, basically telling you that Democrats made up the Epstein files. I'll read it for you right now, or in a second. Elon says, seriously, he said Epstein half a dozen times while telling everyone to stop talking about Epstein. Just release the files as promised. That's not making people happy. Who knows if, I still can't tell whether this is a genuine break. Maybe this is all organized. Maybe they do hate each other, but it's a fake break. But you got to question these things genuinely. Could just be what it looks like too. Matt Walsh seemingly was on vacation, I guess, and came back and to see all this, which would be kind of funny to think about. And he goes, up until 10 seconds ago, there was unanimous agreement that Epstein was a pedophile and child sex trafficker with high-profile clientele who all must be exposed and brought to justice. I mean, guys, that got to the point to where, CNN, Fox News, everybody was saying that. And this is what we were screaming about before, like during the time when he didn't kill himself, when they were trying to gaslight around that. And many of us were saying this has been a topic for years. We've been talking about this. Then finally that goes to bed. Then they all start acting like now we can talk about it. Just like COVID and Israel and everything else they do. Mainstream alternative media worse than anybody today. The point is that was, common knowledge, at the very least accepted as such and discussed. Now, he says, out of the blue, we're being told that none of this is true. And anyone who believes this thing that everyone believed is a whack job. That's coming from the Trump administration, guys, and a conspiracy theorist, which is interesting. This is the kind of shameless 180-degree, unexplained pivot that leftists typically specialize in. Now, those paying attention, personally, at least I'll speak for myself. I've seen that exact same dynamic in every side for a very long time. Now, yes, it slants, right? It was way more prominent during COVID-19. And you know what I think it is? I think it's whichever side of the false paradigm is in the position. And they tend to be a little bit more ridiculous. But it fluctuates. My point is to say that the left specializes in it. Yeah, he's a right-leaning producer, in my opinion. But I agree with a lot of what he says overall. But I think that partisan blinds people. But it is a common two-party dynamic to completely just spin it the other way and hope that your blind followers toe the line. He says, very weird to see it happening on the right. So even if he doesn't want it to sound like it's a common thing, he is saying that we're seeing the right do that right now, which is important. Of course, I didn't even talk about this the other day. Ben Shapiro came out and just literally pushed the lie as if that closed the story. It's embarrassing what we're seeing right now. And we will get into that today. There's very much worth your time to look at. Now, yesterday, has the Epstein Israel lie finally broke the two-party illusion? That's what I was saying in the beginning. Yes, I think. Doesn't mean it's not going to get patched together. Doesn't mean they won't still pushing it forward for the next 50 years. But I think this is a very clear watershed moment. Now, this one, by the way, was an AI picture. I'm going to get to the person I grabbed that shot from today. It was Jason. I'll give him a shout out when we get to the post. Now, I am seeing this. Now, again, I'm not going to, it's very hard to tell today what is a, kind of, what's the term? AstroTurf kind of thing, where, whether it's political manipulation or people online just trying to faking something, question it always. But if you don't know for sure, then you shouldn't dismiss it either, right? Consider these things. Now, in my research on this just today, there's a lot of this. And I personally can see accounts that I know have been very strong Trump supporters who are doing this. Now, I'm not going to say it's the majority. I don't think that at the moment, but it's a massive shift right now. And as Fiorello points out, this isn't just an internet thing. Trump's destroyed his movement. Many MAGA I know are done with him. And I can say that for myself too. There's some that I know they're still hoping that something pans out, and that's their decision. But there's plenty that I know personally that are very clearly like, okay, that was done. That was far too much. The Epstein thing and Israel, quite frankly, has broken this for me. But he says he gaslit and betrayed them where it hurt the most with the Epstein cover-up. He didn't end wars, gave in to Palantir and the deep state. He kept zero promises. Now, the point is, there's people online posting the burning of their MAGA hats. And I'm sure there are people that are playing into that, like a Democrat that's doing that to pretend that they're that, or a fake account. Yes, I'm sure that's happening. But I can see a lot of people that I can verify that are doing it. So I think it's worth considering that people are genuinely seeing through it. I'm going to get to a point in a minute where you get people like we always see going, this is all fake and it's all fake Democrat accounts, the ones you always expect, which, like I said, I'm sure there's some of it. But to pretend this isn't happening is about as desperate as it gets. Now, this is worth hearing again. Now, if you didn't see this, this is probably going to blow your mind because this is what everybody's having such a hard time with right now. This came out yesterday. He said, and what's interesting is that does not seem to be a lot of engagement, does it? That's interesting. Yeah, they did not like this, guys. He says this, what's going on with my boys? And I believe he means Bongino and Cash and everything else, which quickly jumping ahead, there does seem to be a report coming out from Atlantic that I think people may be interpreting as an actual quote, which I don't think it is. This seems to be like a sort of a satire from the Atlantic saying, claiming Dan Bongino is about to leave and like saying that I must get out of this terrible position now. Now, as far as I can tell, that's not a real quote. It's not from him, right? So what's interesting is I'm seeing a lot of people then state this as if it's fact. We'll come back to that. Breaking, Dan Bongino allegedly stepped down. Now, I can't find, unless it's in the chat, by the way, guys, if you have information on that, let me know. Before I went look everywhere I possibly could, and there doesn't seem to be any indication Dan Bongino, as of yet, or Cash, are actually stepping down. That's been floated. And people like this tend to scream the thing that they, I don't think there's evidence for that yet, but I could be wrong. Maybe I'm missing it, and he has something I don't. But if you see it, let me know in the chat. As of right now, I don't believe that's actually happened yet. I think that's just kind of what the narrative is supposed to be for certain reasons. But that's the point, is what's going on with my boys. That's the Cash and Patel thing, or Cash and Bongino. What's interesting, though, is that they both seem to have floated this idea, which seems very childish to me, that we're going to leave if we don't, it just seems, everything about this, I think, speaks to exactly who I think they are. Like I said yesterday, the junior team, right? These are the second tier element. These are people that are not, that they're showing themselves to be the underclassmen, whatever the analogy you want to use is, the not best for the position. And I think that's what's very clearly fleshing out. The way that they conduct themselves, the way that they don't need, they don't seem to really understand a lot of this, or at the very least, they keep trapping themselves in very clumsy lies. But what's going on with my boys, in some cases, gals? But I think by that statement, he means just everybody in MAGA. They're all going after Bondi, which I do think is very strange, by the way. Bondi is only one part of this. Clearly, she was tapped by Megyn Kelly and everyone, Charlie Kirk, and as just the one to go after to save Trump. That's what this is. Very lazy. Trump's clearly responsible regardless. He put her there. He's the one. And clearly, especially her, they're all just blind followers of whatever he tells them to do, as they've proven out with actions that hurt their own careers. But they're all going after Bondi, which they are, but I don't think adds up to the, it's a cover up. It's a, what they call it, a steam release valve, who is doing a fantastic job. So right there, he's going, stop doing what you're doing. At least that's what it seems like. You're supposed to support her. Stop doing what you're doing. We're on one team, MAGA, and I don't like what's happening. See, that's kind of that's what purity test is. Remember they were saying that about us? No, when the idea was you go, you're either exactly in line with us or you're not on our team. That, guys, is team sport politics. You're not allowed to have a different opinion than the team. Then that's not real, guys. You're a part of a cult. That's partisanship, though. It's not one with both sides. We have perfect, look, he says we have a perfect administration. It's just such hubris and such unjustified hubris. The talk of the world. He can't help but be hyperbolic. It's so embarrassing. And the selfish people are trying to hurt it. So right there, he just attacked his own people who have always had his back, because they're now saying this is not okay. Now, you're selfish for pointing this out. Well, yeah, that's when people said, hey, Trump, you can't put you in jail for burning a flag, right? That's unconstitutional. And said they're stupid people to think that. Or just people that understand that, or people that don't get cowed by your screaming. That's crazy to me. Obviously, they're right in what they're pointing out. And this is all over a guy who never dies, Jeffrey Epstein. He says for years, it's Epstein over and over again. Like, as if we all don't know, you've been presenting this as something you would solve the moment you got in, like everything else that you're lying about. It says, why are we giving publicity to files written by Obama, Hillary, Comey, Brennan, and the losers and criminals of the Biden administration? Okay, this is what kills me. There's, as far as I can tell, unless I'm missing something, please enlighten me if there's more to this. There's no evidence for this. This is a floated claim that Trump put out on Truth Social, and then like clockwork, the Johnsons and Jones and Katters and everybody else come out and go, that's the truth. Why? Because it's the only thing you could possibly scream that makes this somehow fall in the it makes it make sense for you. He's not the one. They tricked you. Yes, please, thank God it's not Trump's fault. No, you know what? It's possible, and we should consider that because it would make sense. In the many ways that governments, really more so from a personal level, that people just wanted to attack him, which, yeah, that's possible. But where's the evidence? And if there is no evidence, then that's, not just irresponsible, that's propaganda. We could also consider the exact opposite, couldn't we? We can consider that Trump's altering this and lying about it to save his own butt. Yeah, that's just as likely based on the assumption from this position. If there's no evidence, right? But it says, who conned the world with Russia hoax 51. Yeah, that's the government, guys. That's the government. If you don't know that by now, you're not paying attention. It's not one side versus the other. The government has been involved with using these things to keep you distracted from the real point, which is what's being built around you right now. It says the laptop from hell and more. They created the Epstein files. You see, here's what's crazy. You've got Jones out there, and I'm going to play it in a second, talking about the idea that this is, that they altered this and hid the information. He's saying it's fake. He said they created the files, created them, just like they created the fake Hillary Clinton dossier. So now he is really desperately trying to claim this is not even real anymore. Now, see, that is just, it's, what I keep hearing in my mind? It's how many times have we been talking about this around Israel right now? What do we keep saying about the way Israel conducts propaganda? It's clumsy. It's, here's a lie. Does that work? Oh, no? Then how about this variation? How about we sprinkle some of this on top? Will you buy that? How about these 3 different tries? You pick. Which one do you like better? Just throwing out narrative after lie. I think we're going to get into it today with the bombing of children getting water. They lie, they get caught, they alter it. They say, oh, no, okay, maybe we did kill them, but it was Hamas made us do it. They were human shields. Then finally it turns out those are all lies, and they go, okay, we did it, but it was an accident. Every time. And so here we are. He must know. We just talked about this, that he was just telling us that this was important, that Cash and Bongino and Bondi was literally saying that, we got all this evidence and we're combing through it. And now they say it's fake? Nobody's going to buy that other than blind, stupid followers. Now it says that they used on me. So what does that mean? Oh, no, he's talking about the Steele dossier that they used on him. I thought that was referring to the Epstein files. But he goes, and now my so-called friends are playing right into their hands. You see? So you're not allowed to have your own opinion. You're not his friend if you don't toe the line. Now, why didn't these radical left lunatics release the Epstein files? Well, it's the same old thing. I don't know. I could list off 75 possibilities, but let's pretend like there's nothing that makes. How about the fact that you're all on the same team? How about the fact that everyone's on the files? How about the fact that Biden and Trump and everybody else are all compromised, and that's why none of them want it released? You have to realize, if let's just say all of them are on these files, if they were to release part of the files, that would give the people who are now being exposed the ammunition, the motivation to make sure the rest of it comes out. None of them want. It's not just about people on the list either, guys. It's Israel's blackmail network. You have to understand. This is, and it's also more than Israel, but the realization that this is much more than just the people not wanting it to come out. I don't think they're in control of the conversation. They're the ones who are being blackmailed with this information. They're not the ones that are calling the shots, guys. So the people that don't want this to come out are the ones that don't want to risk their blackmail network that allows them to influence governments all around the world. That's what I think it really comes down to. Some of that's my opinion. Most of it's not. To be specific, the point about whether or not this is, exactly what the dynamic is, but all the points we're making, that's a provable reality. Again, even CNN and Fox News were telling you blackmail sexual network that was involving intelligence. and now we're supposed to act like it's completely ridiculous? It says, if there was anything in there that could have hurt MAGA movement, why didn't they use it? You see, these are just assumptive, self-serving questions. Yet you should ask that question. Question everything. But how about again? If there was anything, why didn't they use it? Well, because maybe it hurt both of you equally. It's simple. Or my real point is always, because you guys are the same thing. You're asking, why didn't the government release information about the government? Because it's the government. Seems pretty simple when you think about it, honestly. They haven't even given up on John F. Kennedy or Martin Luther King Jr. files. What does that mean? They haven't even given up on those? No matter how much success we've had. Okay, success? Now, are we now pretending the files he put out on JFK did anything? It was a massive failure. They tried to lie to you using things that were already mostly out there and other things that were new but didn't even change the story. It got called out by everybody. I interviewed Corey Hughes about it. Or the Martin Luther King files? Where is that? You know, this game they're playing is very embarrassing because I don't think they have any cards left to play here. Other than, I shouldn't say that, other than things that are dramatic. But it says, no matter how much success we've had securing the border, deporting criminals. Right. Is that really what's happening? Even securing the border, guys, these are major stretchings of the truth, let alone, or not, in regard to deporting criminals. Come on, guys. Yes, there has been some criminals. The vast majority have already well been proven to be not that. Many here legally, many with no criminal record. And also, the main level, the MS-13 members, they dropped charges on. The leaders of those the MS-13 gang member leaders, Bondi dropped the charges on. Why? Because Bukele has a deal with them. But let's keep pretending like it's all exactly what was promised. Fixing the economy. Is that what's happening? Energy dominance. Is it? A safer world where Iran will not have nuclear weapons? Again, Israel just published yesterday that they have it still. Now, I don't believe, other than enriching uranium for purposes that are legal for every country, I don't believe that's what they're doing. I could be wrong, of course, but the game is the same, that Israel says, no, they've got it. So because we need to keep going after them. So that makes Trump look stupid because now he's telling you he made the world safe because he stopped Iran, but now it's not the case anymore. Hard not to see that he's being used, isn't this? Where was I? There it is. It's never enough for some people. Yeah, the lies, right? The lies aren't enough. We are about to achieve more in 6 months than any other administration has achieved in over 100 years. This is just not true. I'm sorry to burst your bubble. It's just not true because 90% of what you're claiming you've achieved are massive misrepresentations of what's going on. And it says, and we have so much more to do. We are saving our country and making America great again, which will continue to be our complete priority. The left is imploding. Interesting way to frame that. That's just desperate projection. Now, look, the partisan game is very clearly falling apart in my mind. But for him to make it about they're the ones, you're struggling. I don't see much going on. From right now, this is a Republican meltdown, as far as I can tell. Will continue to be our priority. Well, is making America great again about deporting U.S. citizens? Is making America great again allowing Israel to censor Americans, allowing Israel to spy on Americans, allowing Israel to infiltrate our country, deport Americans? I mean, going after you for anti-Semitism? I mean, guys, that is not what we're promised. And it says, Kash Patel and the FBI must be focused on investigating voter fraud, political corruption, Act Blue. I mean, they're literally parroting this exact statement. Johnson, Kirk, they just copied what he wrote and just posted it online in regard to that. And arresting thugs and criminals instead of spending month after month looking at nothing. The rigged, so I want to make sure I read this all the way through. The left is imploding. Kash Patel and FBI must be focused on investigating voter fraud, political corruption, Act Blue, the rigged and stolen election of 2020, still, and arresting thugs and criminals instead of spending month after month looking at nothing but the same old radical left-inspired documents on Jeffrey Epstein. That is really what he's trying to sell you, that this is nothing but a hoax from the left. He says, let Pam Bondi do her job. She's great. The 2020 election was rigged and stolen. It's all over the place right now. Now, look, I'll be one of the first to tell you that they cheat every time. Both sides do. And yes, they should be held accountable for that. The idea that they're still pointing back to that like anything can now change is wild. And that they're just, all of them. Look over there, Democrats. Look over there, woke stuff. Look over there, election stuff. Just trying to go anywhere else but what this all is burning down in front of them. It's that meme, burning in the house. And he goes, and they tried to do the same thing in 2024. But not though, apparently, since you're in power. That's what she is looking into as AG and much more. 1 year ago, our country was dead. Now it's the hottest country anywhere in the world. Doesn't that just embarrass you? What a stupid thing to say, the hottest country. What is this? Was it like a GQ cover magazine? I mean, the game is the lowest common denominator. The stupidest person in the room is going to go, I want the hottest country. Let's keep it that way, he says, and not waste time and energy on Jeffrey Epstein, somebody that nobody cares about. Well, Trump, your base disagrees. And that is a very problematic thing to do right now. So, even Disclosed TV came out and said, Trump says Obama, Clinton, Biden, FBI's Comey, and CIA's Brennan created the Epstein files, calling it a fake hoax. Just to make sure we put the fine point on it. So, Prem Thacker really does a good job framing this in the ridiculous nature that it is. This is just insane to me. So he's making a joke of this right now, right? So he goes, we're releasing the Epstein files day one. This is what they promised, right? But then it goes, well, there are no files. But then they go, oh, but wait, here's proof, video proof that nothing happened. Oh, but yeah, there is edited. So sorry. Oh, there are no Epstein files at all. It's all fake. There are Epstein files, but the Democrats made them though. So let's take that back a second, right? So they're none, but now they exist, but the Democrats made it up. That is one of the most clumsy, and that's what I keep saying about the Israel point. You just told us that doesn't exist. Now it's that it's a fake thing the Democrats made. Now, how do you not see that as Trump desperately trying to cover whichever way this comes out? Now that's not, I can't prove that's the reason, but that seems very likely to me with what we're looking at. And it says, why do you care so much about this Epstein guy? What are files? That's where we are right now. After everything that was said, it just is cartoonish. And 5 times August, who is has been a Trump supporter up until, I think, over many of the recent choices from COVID stuff and so on, is now starting to call it out. But he says, I think America has finally reached peak gaslighting fatigue with the Epstein situation. It's a good way to put that. Maybe after all the strategic division over the years, this is the point that people finally start coming back together. He says, I know I'd be willing to extend an olive branch to others if it meant uniting to get the truth out on this. Exactly. Oh, and then this was include this for you. It'll be at the bottom, the AI thing I looked up earlier. Israel, all things AI in this country, and everything else for that matter, while they're committing a genocide using that AI. Now, here is, this is just a whole nother level for me right now. I don't understand this. Something that somebody close to me keeps saying about Trump and the same overlap is, it just doesn't make sense, which I agree with. Why would they be committing career suicide? Like from the political perspective, Trump and all of them, why would they do this? I don't have an answer for that. I mean, I could theorize like we're doing, but I don't know for sure. But that's a secondary point. We need to first acknowledge that it is happening, right? Whatever it is, whether they're being blackmailed or forced or they're just dishonest, acknowledge that it's happening. But secondarily, with the media aspect, it's the same point. It is actually wild to me that it seems people are more interested in towing a certain line, whether it's because they're blackmailed or they're forced or they're paid or whatever it is. I don't know. But shockingly to their detriment. Here, Jones came out on the 12:05 today and says, Trump is correct that the Democrat deep state, which I just pause for laughter, the idea that it's part of the government, it's only half the government because the deep state, that's not what deep state means, guys. We can't be this simple. But it goes, has been in control of the Epstein file list. Oh, you know that now, huh? Because Trump said it on Truth Social and 13 minutes later, you somehow know that's true because Trump said. That's not journalism, guys. that is narrative control. And it goes, this is a huge fact that no one but 47 has pointed out. Now, look, guys, of course. Are we going to pretend that it's impossible for the last administration to manipulate that? But let's also realize that this has been there for a lot longer than just that last administration. Trump was there before that. Why didn't they release it then? They're just acting like we're, have the attention span of a housefly. Like we can't think past 30 seconds before what just happened. Clearly, these things don't line up. But the idea is that, or let's just even say it was only from Biden's administration forward. Like I said before, clearly, I think they're all implicated in this, or they're all a part of it. They're all one thing. The idea that they altered it is obviously possible. But if the whole point is that we're not going to release this because they manipulated it, then what you're saying is we are going to withhold information about the pedophile deep state network you're talking about because they remove. It doesn't make any sense other than self-serving interest, right? So we're going to allow pedophiles to exist because pointing out the limited version that they have is bad for our political campaign. it shows you that they care not about you or the outcome or children. They care about using all those things to benefit their outcome. Even if secondarily is all those other things, it's still them first. And again, the main point, there's no evidence to this, guys. That's just Trump saying so. And what's funny to point out is this is just relentless today. Like, this is what they do when there's a narrative that's important to control. He tweets it every 15 seconds, usually the same thing, and then follows up and captions it and tweets it out again. So this was: the exploding Epstein scandal is a clear and present danger to the very existence of our republic. No, really, the cover-up of it, right? What you're doing and the people like you that are covering this story, that's the threat. What everyone else seems to want to do is get the information out, regardless of who that throws under the bus, regardless of who goes to jail for it, because anybody involved should. That's what he says. Trump is correct. The Democrats have altered it. Now, this one, came out about 30 minutes later. Same account, 30 minutes later. Breaking! Trump claims Democrats contorted the Epstein file, and it's true. What? Okay. So what changed? Why would you tweet it again? You just tweeted that he said is true. Nothing else has happened since then. So you move to another place in your house and make another video and go, do we know it? Okay, why? Didn't you already put it out? Couldn't you just pin that? Because it's about relentless, nonstop, in your face. Trust. Trump's the one he knows. And this person just tagged me and said, I can't wait for you to call this out. So let's listen to this. This one is from 12:44 today. Here's what he has to say. Let you hear it.
I would give Trump an F in the last month on his handling of the Epstein case. Everything they've done has created a giant Streisand effect.
Okay. Streisand effect. Implying that, let me ask you something. Why wouldn't you want people to hear this and then look further into the Epstein files? Isn't that, I don't either use that wrong, or he's implying that it's bad that you want to look further into this information. Now, the whole point is what they're trying to do is argue that it's because it's all false, right? The Democrats are faking this, so don't look into it. That's, can you look back at things they were saying from days ago, and this is embarrassing.
That said, though, he made a point in a Truth Social post yesterday that the Epstein file has been controlled by the Democrats. And
before that, Trump. And before that, and on, right? So wasn't controlled forever by the Democrats. He had control of these things back in his first administration. Why didn't he release it then? I guess we'll pretend that's not the case then.
Only what they want to be known is going to be in the file, just like Russiagate and all the other hoaxes.
But that's just a statement Trump made with nothing to back it up on Truth Social. So why are you reporting this like it's fact over and over and over all day long?
I had always pointed out that they could delete anything they didn't want to be seen, but what about adding things that they wanted to be seen?
Okay, so now nothing means anything. Nothing means everything. Everything means nothing. So we can't, no matter what goes on forever, people like this are going to say, well, he's on there because the Democrats added it, and we know it's a fake psyop. Yeah, it certainly could be. But because you're already watering this down with nothing to back it up, you're creating a situation that will never resolve with nothing but insinuation. And that's how this actually works. Now, if he was coming out with evidence and saying, look, this evidence shows us that somebody was manipulating this, well, that would be a whole different ballgame, guys. Trump says that. I can't back it up as a so-called journalist, and I'm going to parrot this all day long as if that makes sense. Well, you can consider that. But as he said in every post, that's true. He confirms it. I'd love to see the evidence, Jones. I'd love to see anything backing this up. Now, that's not to say that there's not. My point is in this, not eventually somewhere down the line that we haven't seen yet. My point is right now, in this moment. They don't have anything, and they're putting it out anyway because it's self-serving. It's about circling the wagons and defending their chosen ideologue. That's what this is.
FBI reports, not any real evidence, but things that spin it. And that's what Trump said yesterday. So I'm not in the business of being an apologist for Trump.
Yes, you are. Very much so.
I've been a major critic.
Not really. You like to say things about that, like he may be the Antichrist, but then go on to support him for the rest of the show. That's not honest.
But this has to be investigated. This has to be looked at very, very deeply. I did a big live stream earlier today that is very, very important. We're going to be going over more. And I want to respond to how Trump has fumbled this, but also want to respond to how I think he should handle it, all coming up here today. But this is a big deal. As Bannon said, we could lose 40 seats in the House.
Oh, that's what matters. political control. Not that children are suffering or the pedophiles are walking around or that Epstein's not being, the information's not being shown or the people that are buying from it. No, just that'll hurt us. Shoot, team sport politics, damn it. That seems ridiculous to me. Are you really talking about whether you're going to lose political influence around a conversation of covering up a pedophile network that you've all told us is the most important thing in the world and are now acting like it's a fake because it suddenly doesn't work for you anymore? This is a cartoon.
With this fiasco, this continues because unlike the Democrats, we have morals and we don't become complicit in cover-ups. But
did you hear what she said? I mean, what a cartoon. You're literally, as you are gaslighting people into ignoring something that is there, you're just projecting. It's like Trump just said, we're the best and they're melting down over there. I don't see anybody else melting down. I see you guys melting down. So this game of projection is desperation, guys. That's what this is. You're in the middle of a cover-up, in my opinion, and this is what you're saying.
Big deal, as Bannon said, we could lose 40 seats in the House with this fiasco. This continues because unlike the Democrats, we have morals and we don't become complicit in cover-ups. But
so, the Democrats, it's literally every Democrat anywhere in the world has no morals? Why do you take things like this seriously? Is there not anybody that believes in Democrat values that also just doesn't want to be a horrible person? Like the idea that every single person on that side, the argument is half the country, but it's much less than that when we realize that less than half this country still believes in the two-party illusion. But hypothetically speaking, that half the country are just all villains because they're not on your team. This is childish division based on the lowest common denominator. They want you guys to fight each other. I don't know why this is not the most obvious thing in the world. And realize all of this is based on something that Trump simply stated with nothing to back it up.
Is there a cover-up? What's happening? We're going to figure it all out together as we wargame every single angle of it.
And buy my pills and tune in every day. It's like, we'll sit here and tear through this and keep screaming at you the false narrative, nothing to back it up. But meanwhile, show you 75 commercials about things you can buy that actually hurt your body.
Be sure to follow me on the next Alex Jones. Be sure to watch the live stream I just did because it's so incredibly important.
Okay. So yes, I have a low opinion of the person. Consider it for yourself. Okay. I said, now to the part you clearly see as secondary, if not a hindrance. The small matter of any evidence that backs up the claim. Not insinuation, not assumption, but evidence any of this has actually happened. I'm in no way saying it's not possible. Obviously, it's even likely, but evidence matters. Since that does not exist, there are self-serving claims for team sport politics. Here is the next one. Same thing. This was about 30 minutes later. Post it again. And then underneath this, post the same one down here. This is just relentless. And it's all the same thing. There's no new information. It says the exploding Epstein scandal is a clear and present danger. That's the same one before. All he did was post it again with a new cover up here. Massive news just dropped. I mean, guys, just that point alone, right? The idea that you just posted this. You just posted this. I'm trying to open the other one. The one right before that, right? And then you post it again with no new information and say massive news just dropped. What's new? You already covered this. This is why they write breaking in all capitals with 17 red lights when it's something that's already been reported 3 days ago, because they want you to think this is something new. Same thing here. This is even further. This is about 30 minutes after that. President Trump now claims Epstein list is real, but the Democrats doctored it. How do you go from it's not there, it doesn't exist, to now it is real, but now they faked it? A child can see through that. This is the mother of all scandals. And he's buying it hook, line, and sinker, or at the very least selling you on it. William H. Bonney says, what a BS excuse. The Democrats doctored my ASS. And Jones says, it's a real possibility. They have been caught many times. Thank you for being honest at least once about the fact that you're selling people on an absolutely unverifiable, no evidence-free allegation from somebody who clearly has an interest in pushing that narrative, maybe because he's on those lists, and you push it all day long. As the one we just showed you says, and it's true. But here you are going, it could be possible. Yeah, obviously it could be possible. But journalists wait for evidence to scream things like this all day long, 75 times, and retweet it 6 more times after that. Come on, guys. I simply said, I do not believe that most Americans are this naive or this stupid. I really don't. And this person says, you have to be incredibly naive to think that Biden administration and the deep state bad actors just let Epstein incriminating information sit there untouched. They obviously removed and destroyed it. You got to love that kind of false certainty. The same is true with the JFK files. It's gone, hidden, destroyed, removed. The information was released that was pretty meager. Well, I said, well, that's called assumption. I prefer facts and evidence. And if one can't consider by now that they are all possibly compromised, all on the list, all on the same team, then I don't think one wants to see it. He said it's true for the JFK classified files. They released what they had, and we already know there's a lot now. I don't understand how people can act like they know things that are being stated by politicians. I said, how do you know they released what they had? Right? That's what they claimed. Sure, I can agree with that, but people can lie, right? Even if that's true. It also in no way proves anything about the current situation, right? They did it then does not mean we know they did it now. That's just assumption. I said it suggests, but does not prove. Facts and evidence. Facts and evidence. And he says, you obviously haven't been following you obviously haven't been following it and the details. And frankly, I don't have the time to educate you. Okay. I guess he doesn't know, the idea that of all people in this conversation, I'm not saying I know everything about everything, but we are going through this every single day, nonstop, more than most people in the conversation. So I think it's funny that the response after simply pointing out, not countering information, just going, well, that's assumption, right? We don't know that for sure. You're too stupid. You don't get it. Maybe you should look in the mirror. Megyn Kelly, at least giving you the other possible here, says there are really only two options. There's no huge undisclosed there on Epstein. I hate when they do that. Bondi misled it on it until she didn't. And Trump is quick to forgive a loyal soldier for being desperate to get on TV. Oh, so now it's just Bondi just wanting to get attention. Are we really pretending like she didn't just do what she was told? Come on, guys. That's insane. It's of all the people, it is shockingly clear that's what she's there for. But then she goes, number two, there is a scandal that's being covered up and it's at his direction. Well, hey, at least she put that out there. I mean, that 90% of people on the partisan side aren't even giving you that positive. That's not true. Yes, obviously, part of it is possible that he is behind all of it. But this account that's doing a good job right now says you're pretending Trump never promised to release the Epstein files and that Cash and Dan never pushed the conspiracy around Epstein. Well, you can call it conspiracy if you want. Stop being a dishonest PRICK. You're all in on it. I just think it's interesting that a lot of people are pushing back on the idea here. And that you can't, there's everything they've been doing over the last 6 months proves that, let's put it this way. What they're telling you now is contradicted by everything they've been saying up until now. So they either lied then or they're lying now, which I do think is an important way to frame that. Now, even John Rich follows up to Megyn Kelly and says, if there's no there, why is Ghislaine in prison for 20 years? The point that anybody honest is making here, because you realize, again, this is the point about the actual charge. If you're being charged with trafficking, that who did they traffic to? It's not that it's not a crime in and of its own right to maybe, move people whatever the other crime would be before you actually transact. There's crimes around all of it, right? You're doing things that are illegal. The point is that they charge them with something that requires there to be somebody purchasing on the other side. And yet we don't get anything. So it takes a special kind of willful ignorance to not see that. So even John Rich, who seems to be in many cases blindly supporting Trump, is even willing to call that out. That's my point, guys. People that are core followers are like, this just doesn't make any sense. I was willing to pull punches everywhere else, but not here. Now, Adam Cochran, who's the one I pointed out who did that really great breakdown of the actual Epstein video that proved in 17 different ways they were lying to you. He says, well, here you go, or well, there you go. Ghislaine Maxwell apparently is appealing to the Supreme Court tomorrow. Here's the Daily Mail. We'll come back to it. Sources who have spoke on her behalf, and this is the Daily Mail article, to news outlets in the past say she's ready to share the Epstein list in exchange for a non-prosecution deal. This is interesting. This could be another part of a lie, but it also could be that this is her in jail seeing her opportunity to challenge what's happening to maybe benefit herself. It wouldn't be surprising. Now it says she's signaling to Trump that she's ready to talk. And if the Supreme Court trial doesn't go her way, she'll release the list. I call that a threat. This is likely why Trump is suddenly so desperate to bury the list. If the list is, quote, fake or doesn't exist, then Maxwell's trial was on false grounds. See, guys, this is fascinating to me. We've seen this 17 times, I mean, probably even more than that, tons of times over the last immigration, from Garcia to Khalil, they keep shooting themselves in the feet, either because they're just that shockingly incompetent or they thought they could get away with it. The point is that you just create a circumstance by claiming it's fake that opens the door for her to say, well, if it's fake, then how are you claiming I trafficked somebody? Which is exactly the point that we're all making. I think unless this is part of a larger ploy, I think they just cornered themselves. They just painted themselves into a corner with their clumsy, defensive, desperate actions that I can't stop seeing all over the place right now. And it goes, and she'd be eligible for a retrial where a lot of evidence was thrown out. There is genuinely a chance this criminal walks because she is blackmailing Donald Trump. Very interesting. Now, you can read the article. The title is simply Ghislaine Maxwell faces do-or-die moment in court as the U.S. government seeks to block retrial bid. Now, clearly, you could argue they want to block the retrial because they think she's a criminal. But just like we saw with them blocking the other discussion, maybe because like with Bukele and MS-13, they don't want this to go back to trial because now she has a tool. She has a card to play, which is Trump just publicly stated the list is fake. That's the president of the United States. So my lawyers are now arguing that if it's fake, how can you? And then you could take it even further, right? That, okay, well, they've never presented a client. So how do you compare? This is going to blow up in their face again, unless there's, more coordination than we realize, which is always possible. So keep this in mind. I think this is going to become very relevant in the very near future. Now, this is interesting. That time when Trump was asked about Ghislaine Maxwell, and he pretended not to know anything about her and then said, I wish her well, which doesn't seem to make much sense.
Ghislaine Maxwell is in prison, and a lot of people want to know if she's going to turn in powerful people. And I know you've talked in the past about Prince Andrew, and you've criticized Bill Clinton's behavior. I'm wondering, do you feel that she's going to turn in powerful men? How do you see that working out?
I don't know. I haven't really been following it too much. I just wish her well, frankly. I've met her numerous times over the years, especially since I lived in Palm Beach, and I guess they lived in Palm Beach. But I wish her well. Whatever it is, I don't know the situation with Prince Andrew. Just don't know. Not aware of it.
Right. So obviously, I mean, the point is, if you can look at the background, it's very clear that Trump has been around, involved, aware of all of this, as has come out in other conversations. So many times it comes up. Remember the point even before this where he was like, who Epstein, like acted like he didn't even know these people. It's clear that somebody doesn't want, I mean, you could argue, to be objective, that he's well aware of how dangerous that conversation is and doesn't even want to be associated with it, right? That's possible. Even if it's a white lie by acting like you don't know, that's possible. But when you stand back and look at all the other information, aside from the points that I often hear about how Trump got, kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago, which is a fair point to consider, right? The point is not to be made that we can, other than the obvious association overlaps of plenty of, or just the fact that I think, and you can prove that all these people, all the presidents are very clear war criminals that shouldn't be given the benefit of the doubt. In the Epstein point, it's possible that he didn't do what they claim, but is still implicated in the larger, in the different blackmail network discussion, in the different overlaps with Israel, like many different other moving parts, or the fact that right now Israel is basically controlling his administration. I think this might be the larger point. Or he's on the list and he's part of it. I mean, the point is that it's not just about that one point. So when you can consider that maybe that wasn't his thing. Maybe he didn't want to be involved with that. Maybe he just thought there's power involved, right? And then he kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago, never looked back. But yet today he is still overlapped with all these same people, still working with the genocidal government, right? So it doesn't have to be the one thing. So the reason I'm saying that is because we can see right now that they are covering this up in a lot of obvious ways. So maybe he's not involved in that part of it, but clearly involved in the larger agenda, which really is what matters to me. So here is Adam pointing out that Trump with Ghislaine Maxwell's Mossad agent father and his associates, which we've talked about. I mean, they even just made a movie, by the way. What was it called? The movie about Tetris, which involves now I'm blanking on his name. Maxwell, the father. He's a very well-known agent. I argue in multiple ways, but for Mossad, very clearly. And they even make this point clear in these different, it's Whitney's books, for example. But it's interesting how over the years, these things kind of drift into the conversation. The point is, here's Donald Trump with them, which doesn't prove that, but when you add all of it together, there's so much overlap. Just like the left or the right will always do, we should not be throwing out guilt by association, despite how all the partisan sides will do it, because it's just not logical. It could be wrong. But when you look at the bigger picture about the overlaps, it's hard to miss that there's something going on here. Maybe not the sexual overlap, but I think it's certainly possible with Trump's track record, his background. You should consider it. Come to your own conclusions about it. For me today, the bigger point is about how this is proving, in my opinion, that the government is always deceiving you. I think because they're being controlled by something else, an outside force. I think that's very obvious. But as we're watching them commit the genocide, as we're watching them cover up these or as we're watching this built around our country, or rather the world with the NRO, it really does matter in a much larger sense. What I'm trying to continue to highlight is that this is not just about the kind of the myopic view of the one story every day, right? Or, the one story about Texas, the one story about here. It's all about trying to consider, on top of the focal point, that there's a much larger story going on. Which you should follow, The Telegraph. Trump promises to release Epstein client list if he wins the election. So here's what's important to point out with that. He was the president before that, right? This is 2024. So you're telling me that he was there for 4 years and doesn't know? So the argument being that he just said that because he's going to release whatever he finds. Well, he was president for 4 years, so he would know whether or not that existed. So he's telling you he's going to release that list. Now, I would argue if he never planned on doing it, he just did it to get you to think he was going to, planning to give you some narrative to hide it, at least thinking that, like every other time, the blind partisan followers will go along regardless. Didn't work this time. But here's Fox News, July 12th. President Trump defends Bondi, says nobody cares about the Epstein file. So smallest point in there is that he promised it. Now he's telling you he's not going to do it. That's a promise not kept. Glenn Greenwald says this was 6 weeks ago. This is him talking to Tucker Carlson. He says you could see exactly what the Trump administration was going to do and was not going to do with regards to the Epstein case. And the reason they wouldn't, because they would never answer if Epstein worked for or with a foreign intelligence agency. This just to put the point out there. And he says the two facts that prove Epstein was working for foreign intelligence. And we've gone through all of this. The reality is that you do know this already. I included the link already, the conversation. And Costa said it publicly, and he said very clearly he was told to back off Epstein because he was in intelligence. And then many different overlapping points have come out about both Mossad and CIA connections. It's very clear. So, and here's Glenn Greenwald telling you very clearly, this is how and that he knew that would be the reason this doesn't come to pass. Now, that you can consider whether you believe him or not. I think he's spot on. Now, in regard to the partisan kind of sidestep of this in a very, very, very crazy way, here's Cat Turd that came out on the 12th and says, if you no longer support President Trump or MAGA movement, have the balls to say so here. It's just so wild to me that that's a purity test. You are the purity test. Proudly put your handle in my replies so I have receipts. Like what? Like they're going to spin back around and deport you and they find it? What is that even supposed to mean? Proudly tell the world how much you hate Trump and all his loyal supporters. Loyal supporters? Let's see who you are. So a year from now, we can all laugh at you. He's just trying to shock people back into place, guys. That's what his job is. Blakely says, thank you for letting us know you support a man covering up for pedophiles. Anyone making excuses for Trump is basically admitting you used sex trafficking children as props. Think about that. Now, I think I have this one over here somewhere. Here's what I posted. I just saw it right there. Oh, wait. Here. I said, well, that's embarrassing for you. This is I think I got it right here. Yeah, I'll come back to that. Every one of these people are being called out in very obvious ways. But then she has some videos that I think are worth pointing out to show you how much is shifting.
I want to talk to you about the Epstein case. I have worked on this for years, trying to get those records of who flew on Epstein's plane and who helped him build this international human trafficking, sex trafficking ring. Now, earlier, I urged then Chairman Durbin to subpoena those records, and I ended up being blocked by Senator Durbin and Christopher Wray. They stonewalled on this, and I know that breaking up these trafficking rings is important to President Trump. So will you work with me on this issue so we know who worked with Jeffrey Epstein in building these sex trafficking rings?
Absolutely, Senator. Child sex trafficking has no place in the United States of America, and I will do everything, if confirmed as FBI director, to make sure the American public knows the full weight of what happened in the past.
Okay, so Trump cares about it. Well, now he doesn't. Okay, at least not in this context. And then the point you're making here is that from, Blackburn and then to Kash Patel, both of you are stating as absolute fact that this is a sexual blackmail network and that there's more information. Now Trump's now telling you it's all fake? Epstein doesn't even matter, that nobody cares about it? Nobody is going to buy that. Here is Kash Patel with Benny Johnson, doing their little partisan tap dance, trying to get you to think what they want you to think.
Why is the FBI protecting the greatest pederast, the largest scale pederast in human history?
Simple, because of who's on that list. Put on your big boy.
Right there. So now they want you to think that it's fake because Trump said so. Here they are saying that the biggest thing in history, a pedophile in history. Why are they covering it up? You just can't look at this and now look at what they're saying and take them seriously, guys.
Boy pants, and let us know who the pedophiles are. We have
the largest scale pederast in human history.
Simple, because of who's on that list. Put on your big boy pants and let us know who the pedophiles are. We have an election coming up, and we need to adjudicate this matter at the polls. God knows the FBI and DOJ aren't going to do anything.
That Jeffrey Epstein story is a big deal. Please do not let that story go. Keep your eye on this. Catherine Rumler, we need to keep the heat on this case, folks.
Wow.
There are a lot of people who are knee deep in the Washington swamp who are not telling you the truth.
You said Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide.
Now, just to be clear, obviously they could have just been saying whatever they thought you wanted to hear. Like, don't let that pass, guys. That's very possible too. I mean, I think if you follow this channel and Whitney and Derek, you already know that there's more to this story. The facts show that. My point is, it's just as likely, though, that they didn't know any of that and they were just screaming whatever they thought you wanted to hear so they can get in power. There's always more angles to this. But also think that maybe they were saying that because they thought it, and then they got into power and they got the JFK talk, right? Or maybe something else, or maybe it's Kash Patel's Mossad girlfriend, or, we'll get to that again in a second, or whatever we're talking about. Like something shifted, or they were lying. The point is, the facts that you already know show you there's something else going on here. And that's why most Republicans are just not buying any of this.
People don't believe it. Well, I mean, listen, they have a right to their opinion, but as someone who has worked as a public defender, as a prosecutor, who's been in that prison system, who's been in the Metropolitan Detention Center, who's been in segregated housing, you know a suicide when you see one, and that's what that was.
He killed himself. You want me to? I've seen the whole file. He killed himself.
Jeez. Wow. Well, here's a couple more things she shows you. She's saying, let's definitely not remember any of this. Just going through all the different posts. Libs of TikTok, Epstein files are being released. Glenn Beck says Epstein files will drop in the next 10 days. Glenn, all the rest, Patrick Bet, Dave. I mean, all these people are just, whether they just want to go along to get along to benefit off the Trump train or they're lying for other reasons. These people are just constantly pushing whatever BS they need to get in front of you guys. Here, Libs of TikTok again, of course. Breaking, AG Pam Bondi says FBI received a truckload of documents. She said that. We can't prove any of this. Like, she wants to tell you, but it was all just a bunch of downloaded porn from the websites. Come on, guys. Insane. Release the Epstein list. And now they don't want to call it out. So Libs of TikTok will say that all day long if they can make it about a Democrat. But now that it's Trump, we're going to act like it's all okay. Odds are now up 64% on Kash that Trump declassifies the Epstein documents. Boundy is holding a conference later today. On Kalshi. The betting thing. Reporter, will you really be releasing the Epstein files? Bondi is sitting on my desk right now. All this matters. Here's Libs of TikTok we showed before. Trump says he'll release the Epstein files if elected. Democrats are shaking right now. Come on, guys. Pretty wild. Now, this is one of them that's really important, or rather just really clear. This shows cat turn on top saying, if you're in any government and you're protecting gang rapists and pedophiles, there's 100% chance you're a pedophile. Cat turd, 2025. July instead of January. Here we go. This account says Trump's a pedo. Imagine believing this piece of SHIT troll. Are you seeing this now? Okay, based on your logic, that's exactly what's happening now. But see, they don't follow logic. They follow reactionary, emotional, whatever, political, what's the right word? Reaction, reactive, kind of just responding to what's in front of you. You don't consider whether it applies with your principles. These people will just scream whatever works for the moment. Here's another example. And this is what I find hilarious, by the way. This account's called Retard Finder. It's one that they have loved up until now because largely I think they go after Democrats. But what I find I think because This Is You is getting so much attention, Retard Finder stepped into it and starts calling out the obvious hypocrisy of the day, which is the Republicans who are contradicting themselves every 30 seconds right now. I simply said, to now find themselves made fun of on the very account they have been cheering on, but only as it highlights Democrat hypocrisy, is, damn it, an obvious sign that illusions are crashing down, at least as I see it. And this is the one saying, if you know who the pedo rapists are, you were involved in Epstein's Island, and you hide that info because they're famous actors or influential politicians. You're just as guilty as they are and just as scummy as they are. Okay? This one says, my patience is wearing thin when it comes to arresting government thieves. Epstein's rape island pedos and thieves who have stolen trillions that Doge has exposed. The traitors who set up Trump, the network who tried to assassinate him, the child traffickers, the traitors who stole the election in 2020, the COVID demons who lied about everything and killed millions are swatters. Hundreds of Congress members who are getting rich through insider trading, and on and on and on. I trust Trump and team, which is embarrassing to say about a politician. But we must have accountability. If this doesn't happen with hundreds, possibly thousands of arrests of these traitors, nothing changes. Well, here we are. This one says the pedos who were involved on the island, SHIT, on Epstein's rape island have been protected long enough. Release the list already. We have a right to know who they are, and we're sick and damn tired of these demons getting a pass for another minute. Arrest every single famous pedo who participated, every last one. So all the girls who have testified about seeing raped on Epstein's Island were lying, and Ghislaine Maxwell's in prison for being a madam for nobody. Please tell us this is fake news. This is not new. I really don't care how they release the Epstein files as long as they get released. Now, you get the point. It goes on and on and on and on until today. Let's look at the newest one here. Yeah, look at this. This is just insane to me. Okay, yeah, so there's a couple of them. Epstein list with no redactions is on the top of that list. Now it says, just so you know, we now have the FBI and DOJ who's protecting every single rich, powerful, and famous person who went to Epstein's rape island. Our country can't survive a government who protects pedophiles over victims. These agencies are beyond repair. They absolutely second me. You? Okay. Now to currently today, everyone, my advice is to mute or block all negative black pill accounts. It's amazing how successful the first 6 months of Trump's administration has been. Don't let these sourpuss chronic complainers hijack your happiness. Be positive. You're winning. Have a great Saturday. And then Kash Patel comes out and says the conspiracy theorists just aren't true. Never have been. It's an honor to serve. This is about Epstein. And he says, fire. I mean, that's a special kind of stupid, guys. Gunther Eagleman, speaking of, he says, you can't do both, or you can do both. Be angry that people who raped innocent children on an island walk free and still support President Trump at the same time. I do. Well, you can do whatever you want. That's an insanely stupid thing to say, seeing as how you're literally supporting the person who's allowing them to continue to walk free. I simply just said team sport politics, which is what this is. Just straight up cheerleading. This one, Cat Turd says, good night, everyone. Oh, that's why I just played for you. My advice is to block everybody. I said, and now they're back to calling anyone pointing out the obvious black-pilled. Don't let yourself be gaslit by these weak-willed followers. You know what this is. It's never been more obvious. This you points out Mila Joy. Back in 2025, January, released the Epstein files. And then here she is, July 12th. Agreed. And if Dan says there's nothing to the Epstein files, I believe him. Wild. Now, this is my point from earlier. Now, anybody in the chat have any update on this in regard to whether Bongino has stepped down? Because I have seen in the past where something like this kind of drifts out on Twitter and then everything says it's not true until an hour later, until it breaks through. You know, like that's possible. But let me know in the chat whether this comes to pass. What it appears to me is that this is what's been circulating since yesterday. And I think a lot of people are pointing at this as if this is Bongino saying that. As far as I can tell, that doesn't appear to be the case. She's just making it like a satirical point about this, saying, Bongino here, I must get out of this terrible position where I am helpless to see what's really going on so I can get to the bottom of Jeffrey Epstein's situation. And then says, Kash Patel can come with me if he wants. I've always felt like there's no quote. And he makes fun of him kind of with kettlebells, and it doesn't seem real. You can read it. It's all just one long kind of ranting thing. And I've looked for that. I didn't find it anywhere. So what I think is, and look, I've talked about this account before. I've seen him like that. He just shared something about Texas and the weather, which was, it wasn't just Texas. It was just another weather thing happening in the country, which was not what he made it out to be. 3 different claims he made, which were all false. And I just think people are trying to use hyperbolic claims to get a lot of reach right now. And I've already called this person out in the past. So this might just be going that thing said that. I'm going to use the Jones tactic and claim I knew this ahead of time. That's what I think is happening. But let me know. I could be wrong. So my gut tells me that this is not what's going to happen. I don't think Bongino and Kash Patel are going to leave their positions of power. I think both of them are power hungry, very clearly, and are well above their station right now, in my opinion. I shouldn't say station like in that kind of hierarchy concept. I mean, like they're above their merit is the way to say it, in my opinion. I don't think they're even close to being right for these positions. But the point is that that's what they want from it. So I don't think, regardless of unless they get pushed out, that they're actually going to leave it. But I could obviously be wrong. It very well could be the story is that they, maybe Bongino's like the other side of it would be that these people are going to leave because they do believe that they're being lied to. But then if that's the case, then why do they just toe the line for the last week? He killed himself, and that's it. Shut up. You're being a conspiracy theorist. I mean, it just doesn't line up. So if you've already stepped into that after pushing everything else, why would you pull back again? I think that already shows you that they're in it for the long haul, guys. They want the power. They want the influence. That's what I think. And I thought it was hilarious to find out that he actually blocked me. I don't know when this happened. I was looking today to see, just what he had recently said, and we can check now to see if there's any update. Can you believe that? Now, to be clear, this is his personal account, so it's not the government thing, even though we have seen the government accounts block people too. But doesn't this seem interesting to you? This is new. So what this shows me with a 7 million follower account, and this guy's the deputy director of the FBI, they really do know what we're doing and what we're saying. TLAV, Ryan Cristian. Recognize that, guys. We are relegated to some corner. They don't want anybody to know that we're there, even though we're reaching more people than anybody recognizes, and even though we're having the same conversations, interviewing the same people that they have at the highest level of the conversation. I just think that there's a point of which they recognize that what we're doing, the way we're doing it, is the most dangerous to the narrative. Objective, nonpartisan. And I think nonetheless, despite all of the pushback, we're still succeeding. We are still breaking through. We are still reaching people. I couldn't be more proud of that. And it's all because of you. Nonetheless, the point is, clearly these people know what we're saying. How the idea that I'm not on Twitter saying things about Dan Bongino. So that shows me that somebody saw my 4-hour stream or the middle part of it where we're talking about how ridiculous these people are. I think that's profound. I think that they recognize how we're influencing people a lot more than they want you to realize. But thank you to you guys for supporting TLAV. That's why we're doing this. Nonetheless, I simply said, so Bongino blocked me. Was it something I said? Hashtag over the mark. And Richard Grinnell says, one thing I know for sure, Pam Bondi and Kash Patel would never cover up a crime. Never. It's absurd to think they would. Now, I don't know if he's being sarcastic or not. I honestly don't know. I just simply did this. It's crazy. Like, I hope he's being sarcastic, because the idea that that anybody would never do something is hardly even anybody could do something, but that Bondi and Kash Patel would never cover up for a crime. Guys, these are the people that of anybody they would, because Trump asked, because Trump said so, they would do it. That's what I think very clearly. Yeah, see, people don't seem to be buying it, but who is this guy again? Richard Grinnell. I remember the name from something. Oh, that's right. Yeah, so I clearly think he means that. Yeah, guys, that is wild. That is the kind of blind, that is saying I trust, I believe, I have faith in these people. That's not what you should be. Don't be like that. Don't be like Richard. Now, Viva Frey said the solution is actually quite straightforward about how we go forward from here. Replace Bondi, of course, because she's the only problem, right, guys? What was that? Oh, this is, did I click this Bitcoin thing? She doesn't even need to get fired, he says. She can be replaced under the pretext of a conflict of interest. So what, making up a narrative? That seems very dishonest. Given her statements on the Epstein files and need to be independent for the context of step 2, right? So the first point in pretending that Bondi is in any way doing anything that's just out of, are we really of the mind that any of them are doing things without Trump's approval? That seems really naive to me. But it says, number 2, appoint a special prosecutor and investigate investigative committee. A church committee for the Epstein case, right? Because that all worked out for everybody, right? What we're calling for is a nonstop parade of BS that goes on for 6 months that really amounts to nothing, but they can pretend we looked into it and they'll sell you on the false narrative, right? Here's your COVID narrative. Here's your 9/11 narrative. We sure screamed about it for 6 months. Come on. We all know this. Do we really pretend like Congress is going to do anything? Like we're ever going to because half of them or all of them are implicated on this. I just think it's really naive to pretend like putting this through any kind of like, here's the point. The government is what's being accused. The government is what's on this, and the government's going to investigate itself. This feels like, look, I've seen him speak. This guy's smarter than this, in my opinion. It says, and not just for the Epstein death or client list, but for everything. The Acosta plea deal, what was covered by warrants, and more important, what wasn't. Like all the different parts of this, right? Okay. Why wouldn't you just release the information? This idea that we need the government to parse through this and give us what they think is important, that's not what anybody wants anymore. That's not what anybody should ever want, guys. But he says, unseal everything. Now, yes, I agree with that. Or as much as possible without, that gives them the sidestep, by the way. A detailed report with 12 months of the appointment with full and public. Okay, this sounds like it's going to go on for the next couple of years. And then halfway through, something bigger will happen or a war will break out and everybody misses it. We'll all move on and nobody will. That happens every single time, in my opinion. He says the solution is not complicated. It's actually transparently obvious. Now, why would Bondi have to be removed for any of that? That seems very partisan, self-serving to me. Bondi is just one other player in the same old thing. They're all lockstep with this right now, all of them. So if we're going to pretend like Bondi's doing something wrong, that's Cash, that's Mongino, they're all doing the same thing. Doesn't that seem weird to only point out one? I think that's odd. Now, this is Jason Bachelor. Shout out for this image he put up today. He simply said, this is the image we use for today. That's Trump right there with Epstein glowing at him. He says, find yourself someone who looks at you like Epstein looks at Trump. Using that kind of old, meme that goes around. It's a good point. Derek says, I see some MAGA now ready to question whether or not Trump has always been a setup. The answer is yes. In his opinion, I agree. This was all by design, and this is what I've been telling people for years. So then what does that mean for the attacks, in quotes, on Trump over the years? We've seen what the media does when they don't want someone to be heard. They ignore them. They don't talk about every single thing they do every day. The faux attacks on Trump were based on mostly BS, and they achieved two things. Helping people lose trust in the corporate media so the new mainstream alternative media could be propped up. Number two, making Trump appear to be an anti-establishment populist hero. The predator class realized there was a real awakening taking place. We both very much agree on this in the 2000s, 2010s. And so they needed to co-opt the movement, the momentum of the independent media. So they crashed the remaining support in corporate media, only to push people toward influencers who can be controlled and help guide the masses back into the false left-right paradigm. This has been the part of Trump's role: create chaos and direct people to the faux alternative media while leading a faux resistance. The answers to our problems will not be found in Donald Trump, Elon Musk, the America Party, Thomas Massie, or any other candidate they prop up. Politics can't save you. 100% agree. Taking charge of your life will and liberty will. Now, that's not to say that you should ignore it. Like, for example, Catherine Austin Fitts, and her and I have had many conversations about this, and I very much respect her opinion. I'm too jaded when it comes to politics, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to ignore the possibility of people trying to work through that to see some positive outcome. Like, I've seen them work through things in Tennessee, for example, with the Stop Spraying Us bill. Now, like I said, it still doesn't solve the problem, but it does, in fact, take a good step in the direction of stopping a certain area from being sprayed. They're just spraying above it, which is what we talked about. The point, though, is that that is still a good step, and I do think people did it for the right reasons. I could be wrong. The point, though, is that I will not support anything political and voting people and politicians. I just think we're being played that direction. But I will not, I would never suggest you shouldn't if you think it'll make a difference. He says, breaking free, says taking steps now to be as free from the coming technocracy as possible will save you. Building community in your local area with like-minded people will save you. You see, it doesn't mean you have to break off in the middle of the woods. That could be the case. He's simply saying here, break away from the control structure. You can be in your own community, right? But start breaking away from using free exchange between human beings. Right? Trade goods. Don't use your currency. You vote with your dollar if that's the case. There's many different ways that you can create your own little community that doesn't require dependence on these systems. And it says breaking free and opting out while you still can is the answer. It also doesn't mean that every single thing all at once. We all have these moments and these times that we come around these things where I just talked about this. Whether, for example, if we all wanted to be absolute about these things, maybe we should all stop driving, right? Because driving is but most people can't do that because clearly there's 100 different ways that we need to get around to go to your job. And that's not even about like a climate change point. It's just about the obvious ways these things are used against us. The point is that we can take these steps when and where we can, right? We have to lean into the ways that we can make a difference. And check out this link he does, right? This is his exit and build discussion, which is important, guys. Derek's been doing this a really long time, and it is one of many potential solutions to find another path. Now, the next point in here, James Lee, I want to play this video again before we go forward. James Lee got his TikTok banned because he put this video out, which I think is very revealing.
Director of the FBI caught up in an Israeli honeypot operation. All right, here's the context. Quote, some social media users have wondered whether the FBI and the U.S. Justice Department's refusal to release the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients could have something to do with Alexis Wilkins, the 26-year-old girlfriend of 45-year-old FBI Director Kash Patel. This is what people online are pointing to, the fact that Patel's girlfriend, Alexis Wilkins, works for PragerU, which is a media company that supposedly espouses American values, except for the fact that it is run by a former Israeli military intelligence officer. Now, I did a bunch of digging, and unfortunately, there's actually not a lot of public information to go off of in terms of Alexis Wilkins' background. Now, what I was able to find is that her father worked for Gillette and that her mother was in aerospace and pharmaceuticals. It also says that they lived in England and Switzerland before settling in Fayetteville, Arkansas when she was 9. It also says that she attended College du Le Monde International School in Switzerland. Now, interestingly, ChatGPT is calling this a strange biographical gap in that she has no visible friend network or public high school college cohort interviews, which they say is unusual for a public figure in entertainment, and that if a Mossad asset were inserted early in life, these gaps would be precisely where you'd hide alternate history or handler training. Dr. Simon Goddick says that Alexis Wilkins is nearly 20 years younger than Kash and also works for an NGO that's basically Israeli intelligence, that's PragerU that he's referring to, and he says, seriously, why would an attractive young woman date a not-so-attractive Indian American? Classic honeypot. I mean, I don't know. Who are we to really judge what people are attracted to and not attracted to? Anyway, I'm not sure what's true or what's not true, but evidently these are, quote, classic elements used in honeypot operations: soft power, ideological alignment, and sexual emotional entanglement. Let me know what you think.
Again, that, other than the point about whether that could mean more, which is certainly something anybody's allowed to say, was all based on facts. And yet that's enough for TikTok to completely ban his entire account. And as he says, we are not a free country. I mean, that's why do you think that is? Now, if you did an entire video about any other politician having a girlfriend that might be in the Chinese military, do you think that would get you censored? Now ask yourself why one is censored and one is not. I don't need to answer that for you. I think it's it is self-explanatory. There's something else going on there. There's an entity that doesn't want that to be discussed through U.S. media. And the fact that they can make that disappear says everything. And no, I'm not talking about Jewish people at large. It's very clearly much more than that. Zionism is the real point. If you want to know more about that, we've done 100 different shows on the co-option of Judaism by Zionism. And there's plenty of Jewish people in the world that will speak for hours on end about how Zionism is a manipulation of Judaism. And guys, it is a growing and rapidly evolving conversation in the world. Orthodox Jewish communities all over the world are beginning to call this out. Look it up. We've talked about it constantly. Now, I thought it was worth pointing out in this overlap of like the infiltration point that we didn't go in deep today, but we just played the clip from Wilkerson telling you that the Pentagon was overtaken by Mossad in 2002. That's his statement. The worth considering in this is that there's more going on. I just thought that was interesting to think about. Remember we just talked about this in June 14th? Minnesota suspect was security contractor tied to Gaza West Bank. It's funny how we just dropped that story. Like this guy, what happened to that? The guy with the mask? Did they ever even find out what? I mean, it's just these things just drift into the background. The point was the guy was a security contractor who literally had security clearance in the most dangerous places in the world, like Gaza and the West Bank and the Middle East. Hopefully you can consider what that might mean. The idea that we are seeing much more begin to happen, and I don't think it's in the interest of Americans. Here, Netanyahu says Israel's 8th front, admitting to you that they're in a multi-front war with a bunch of countries that are, illegal war fronts, killing civilians in Lebanon and Syria and Gaza and what am I missing here? Anyway, the point is multiple fronts of war that Israel's involved in, acting like we're always defending ourselves. Imagine trying to pretend you're defending yourselves against this many illegal fronts of war insane, especially since you are obviously starting these in every single context, despite the screaming lies of Zionists. The point, the eighth front is against you, America. He's not even trying to hide that. He's now turning his eighth front on disinformation. And what do you think he means by that? Anti-Semitism. Trump's okay with that. Trump's spearheading that for him.
The eighth front, the disinformation campaign is humongous. It takes a second for a lie to circulate the world, and then you have to battle it with the only weapon you have, which is the truth.
Yeah, except you're not using the truth. You were the ones that spread the lies about beheaded babies and rape and everything else that has now been definitively proven by Israeli news and everybody else in the world to be lies. But imagine sitting there knowing everyone knows that, knowing that you've been caught lying, even by Haaretz in the corporate media, everywhere, and just standing there and saying, we have to stop disinformation? I mean, that's as embarrassing as having the U.S. government tell you that. They know you see them. You understand that. So ask what this is really about.
And truth is slower than lies and more difficult to ascertain because you have to get the facts. When you lie, you can say anything, and it's instantaneous. When you tell the truth, you have to ascertain the facts, and until you do that, in the electronic age, boy, that lie could encircle the earth, 1,000 times. So it's a handicap, but we'll fight the information war too. Basically, you have the weapon of truth. We just have to be more efficient at disclaiming this, and I think we have to shame the media that does this. I mean, I know you're sort of tepid and mild about that. You should continue with your passion to speak for the truth and to shame those who spread the lies. I don't see any other solution. Do you?
No.
No. Thanks, Zionist Mark Levin. The point is clearly anybody saying anything away from our narrative, you need to attack them, right? But now it's gone beyond that. Deport them, arrest them, remove their citizenship. Israel's doing that to Americans. I mean, if you haven't, it's not even like a hyperbolic statement. Trump many times has now said the priority is on U.S. citizens. Yes, you can say naturalized, but in both statements he made, he says, or born here. It's obvious where this is shifting. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to happen tomorrow, maybe not at all. But the really obvious push is that they're setting this up for you to be framed as the problem, whether it's because of anti-Semitism, whether it's about anything else. And now you're being dealt with, attacked, censored, removed because of a foreign country's interest. Sure as hell's not America first. I'll tell you that right now. Now, I'll, as always, include this long thread of many different points of Trump telling you that he will censor Americans for Israel. Here's one of the most obvious.
We will remove the jihadist sympathizers and Jew haters. We're going to remove the Jew haters who do nothing to help our country. They only want to destroy our country.
Okay. The obvious point is always, even if they were actual people that truly hated Jews, that's not against the law. You're allowed to think and act, or think and say whatever you want. That's the truth. If you hated white people, are you ushered off to jail? If you hate Christians, are you sent to prison? No. Are you censored? No. So the point is, I'm not defending that. If you hate Jewish people because they're Jewish, you're disgusting, and I'll tell you that. I have the right to say it. You have the right to think it. The point, though, is first and foremost, that's not legal for him to deport anybody who simply has an opinion. But secondarily, we all know that they're largely pointing to people that are waving Palestinian flags. Now, yes, as I've always, of course, maybe that person simultaneously also has that feeling, but you can't make that statement. There's most people in this conversation, as you can see, are clearly supporting a people that they believe are suffering and that are suffering. And then you come around and call them anti-Semites, who in fact, the Zionists most likely, most obviously, are actually creating more of that, which is the whole point. It's just very clear. So when he says that, what he's talking about is whatever Israel points to. And who do we already see? Khalil, Ozturk, people that are provably not doing anything wrong, who are now being attacked because they spoke out against Israel. People that Israel handpicked through Batar USA. All public information. Now, all of that and what Israel's doing, the influence of our country, let's not lose sight of what they're actively doing with the U.S. alongside them. Israel attacks 134 Palestinians in Gaza over 24 hours. This is every day. This is from the 13th. This happens every single day. People are barely even talking about this anymore, which makes me sick. This is from the 11th. At least 798 people in Gaza have been shot and killed while receiving food, according to the UN, according to everybody, including human rights groups, including people witnessing on the side, including everybody. UNICEF will point out right now, telling you point blank, I watched it happen. Doctors literally telling you, I watched them kill children, and nothing stops this. The U.S. government, in fact, not only doesn't stop it, it jumps up and gives them more money. Here's $30 million to keep doing it. That's what just happened. This is the 10th. USAID, by the way, even though they were told that it disappeared, apparently. 798 people just while they've been receiving aid in this fake food line they're using. Now, here's another video. We've shown you at least 2 of these already. Here's a video taken while this American Mossad contractor, because it's both. I mean, this is the GHF, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, as Max Blumenthal and others have proven, is literally funded by Mossad. And the U.S. government is involved with the same dynamic. And so you have people that have shown to be U.S. mercenaries and people from all over the world. So as they're now working with the open terrorist group and always have been in Syria, ask yourself who else they're willing to work with. These people have been caught more than once on film shooting openly at random people collecting food. Again, how many times we need the point blank video evidence of the thing they claim isn't happening? Apparently an infinite amount of times, because the governments involved don't care that you're proving it. They don't care about the fact that it's wrong. They only care about pretending that they're doing the right thing, so you keep giving them money, so you keep bowing to their interests. They don't care about you. And here he is shooting at random people. Over and over and over. A U.S. soldier mercenary directly targets those waiting for aid in a distribution center. And you realize, guys, this I'm going to play from UNICEF. They're watching this. There are people from all over the world now, and they still don't seem to care. This is James Elder from UNICEF. Here's what he has to say.
Tell us what your evidence is for this very serious claim that the Israeli Defense Force is actually shooting children as they queue for food. I mean, that's a very, very serious allegation. That's clearly a war crime if it's true. How do you back it up?
Yeah, unfortunately for me, Richard, I met those children. So part of it is that this aid distribution point is so problematic, bizarrely, not only because we're seeing children shot and wounded there, but because it's trying to sideline humanitarian aid, which had 400 distribution points. So UNICEF, we were part of 400 distribution points. We went door to door for malnutrition. This has been with a deliberate aim, a spoken aim, not mine, but a spoken aim to push people to the south. That's why there are now 4 distribution points.
Can you answer my question?
Yeah, I met a little boy, Abed Al-Rahman. He was 13. He went there. He was given money, Richard, to go and buy bread. But he saw this flood of people moving to one of these sites and he thought, I can get more than bread for my family. I mean, he's watching his mum, slowly losing weight in front of him. I can go to one of these sites. He went there. There was chaos. There was, according to him, and I spoke to at least 15 people who said this, drone fire from above. When I met this little boy, he had tank shell in him. Now, there's only one side to this fight that has tanks. He had shrapnel there in his pancreas, in his stomach. This little boy wanted to tell his story because and as he told it, Richard, his dad was in tears. It's a patriarchal society, but he's telling a story about, I just wanted to get food for my mum. On the day I left Gaza, 2 weeks later, this little boy died of those injuries, died trying to get food for his family because, yes, it's been denied through humanitarian systems that work and is being militarised in these sites. So unfortunately, yeah, that situation is happening many, many times over.
What's most crazy about this is what Robert and I recently talked about. Just on a side note, by the way, more articles already in the works from Robert, from Derek. But the point here is this, what we discussed. Oh, it's not the title, actually. It's the picture you're looking at. The title was Robert in the Lakesh interview, what's next for U.S., Israel, and Iran, is that these groups, these ISIS-linked groups that they're working with, were the very groups, the gangs that were connected, are provably connected back to Israel. This is on the surface, guys. Even called out by different international entities that are working with Israel to steal the aid and blame it on Hamas. That's been going on. Robert's been yelling about this. Now, that's been the ongoing situation. Now they create this food line, and who do they tap to use? They use the ISIS-linked gangs who've already been stealing and selling back at high rates to Palestinian people that they turn around and pretend the Palestinians are doing that. They're not. The point is, guys, this is obvious. And here's a show that I did on this even before that. This is from 2025. Here's the show I did back in 2024, November. Trump team barred from agencies and Israel working with ISIS-linked gangs to starve Gaza. It's all in there for you, even back before the food queue lines were starting, because we already knew that. Again, if you're following this platform, you're likely ahead of the story. I'm not trying to, I'm demonstrating our value. It's important, I think, to recognize that that's the reality. Now, the point, he's watching them continue to shoot and starve people. How much evidence do we truly need? Include these for you. You should watch this one with Robert. It's a really good interview. More coming for sure. Now, here's an interesting point to make. This is an article from Haaretz. Israeli Finance Minister Smotrich, starving Gazans to death may be moral, but the world won't let us. Now, you'd be forgiven for thinking that's him speaking today, right? It's not. That's from August 5th, 2024. Yeah, it started on October 7th. They lie about everything. The Israeli Zionist organization. August 5th, 2024. Smotrich, before October 7th, is saying, we want to kill them all. We want to starve to death. But, the world's not going to, even though we think that's moral, the world won't let us. Well, guess what? They clearly manufactured a situation where at least the world would look the other way. Disgusting. Here's another example. Zionism Observer points this out. 2021. He writes, this is Smotrich, there is no escape from crushing Hamas. Flatten the strip. Again, you'd be forgiven for thinking that's right now, but no, they were saying these things long before the argument that October 7th justified it, even though we now know that most people on that day were killed by Israel, by the Hannibal Directive, and that the ongoing actions around all of it were much different than we were told. Even the concert, there's evidence of them using them as human shields to fight. It's obvious what was going on, guys. Israelis mostly seem to be calling this out today. Here, Zionism Observer points out something that we were also just discussing. Israel has announced this morning that and this was on the 12th, that they will now murder anyone that goes fishing or swimming. Now, this is just an announcement. They were doing this before they even stated that. We just talked about this. There's always been like a barrier. There's technically a legal mileage that's supposed to be allowed. Roberts talked about this. Whatever, 5 miles, I forget what it was, where they're allowed to go out and fish, even though nobody should be able to stop them from going out wherever they want. The point is that Israel, they claim that allowance is, for military purposes. And what they do, they randomly change the mileage every moment, every day. So they go out fishing, right? But they need to ask themselves, should I go further to get fish, even though I know I'm allowed to? Maybe they've arbitrarily changed that line to half a mile. I'm going to go out to get food and they'll shoot me in the head, which happens every day. Not every day in the water, probably, but every day in this country. The point is, they've been doing this for so long, and so they have to flirt with getting shot just for going out to feed themselves because they're already food insecure, which has been going on for years. Now, they just simply go, if you even go in the water, we're going to shoot you. Now, don't forget what we just showed you about the map. They have now been kettled into this small area backed up against the water. Now they can't even go in the water. They're going to get shot. This is happening, guys. This is where we get into this disgusting part of the story. Actually, this should have been the part. Israel wants to build the most moral concentration camp in the world. That is from July 10th, 2025, from the leading Israeli newspaper, Haaretz. Israel wants to build the most moral concentration camp in the world. So it needs to really sink in to maybe those that haven't taken this to heart yet. The world's governments they know you see them. They know that they're allowing Israel to commit the world's live stream genocide, the worst thing we've ever seen, and they know you see it, and they're just hoping that you don't stop them, or rather, they're hoping that they don't get forced to stop Israel because Israel to do so. I mean, I don't know what the interaction is, but you know that we all see it. You know that they see that we're calling them out. My point is that nothing happens beyond that. Not only does nothing happen, they give them more money. They stand up and call you a racist for saying anything else. They let the Zionist Millers of the world jump out and call you racist for challenging. And here's what Israel's leading newspaper is telling you, that they're building a concentration camp for people to die. Here's what Avi Martin said. Just to be clear, Palestinians who refuse to, quote, voluntarily enter this concentration camp, which is what they're calling it, will be murdered. That's the plan. Stated openly, not a joke. And people still insist with a straight face this isn't genocide. Those outside these zones will later be identified as Hamas terrorists, providing legal justification for their elimination. That is from an Israeli newspaper. What they're telling you is we're going to force them into these concentration camps, where from there we're going to force them out or kill them on its own right. But if they don't kettle themselves into these areas where they can't survive, we'll pretend that they're terrorists and kill them. End of story. It's absolutely abhorrent. Now, a point that I want you to not miss, on top of everything else, and the ongoing West Bank annexation and settlers who are beating and raping and torturing and burning houses to the ground with children inside of them, all of which has happened just since October 7th, but before that as well. We've covered all of it. That an American was beaten to death by Israeli settlers. Where are all the Americans? Where's the American government? I thought they were all about Americans, except they don't care about them when it's Shireen Abu Akleh or Joe Meter or people that they're inconvenient for them, which ultimately shows you that they don't care about Americans at all. They care about the narrative. So Asal Rod says, I can't find this story in one U.S. news outlet. At least this was a couple days ago. This, I think it is now. This is terrorism that killed a 23-year-old American citizen. If he was an Israeli American, there would be outrage from U.S. politicians and wall-to-wall coverage, as you've already seen. But he's Palestinian American, so it's not a headline. Now, even worse, by the way, from an American perspective, there was examples of just Americans who were in Palestine when this first started in Gaza, who were trapped there, and as far as I can tell, have died. No one followed up on any of that, and they got killed by Israeli bombings, and your American government didn't care at all. Settlers beat Palestinian American to death during attack on Ramallah. It just never stops. Glenn Greenwald, citing Zetio, says, Israeli settlers kill American citizen in West Bank. His name was Saifullah Musalat, was visiting his family when settlers allegedly beat him unconscious and blocked an ambulance from reaching him. So you have to understand, guys, this is somebody who's lived outside. Let's look. See if we can find it. The point was somebody who came to visit his family in the West Bank. All right, so you can't get into Gaza. So this is somebody who's living, he's an American citizen. So whether he's in the United States, which makes most sense, or if he's somewhere else but also has American citizenship, the point is he came to see his family in the West Bank, and they killed him. There is nothing off limits for these people. So ask yourself, if they're willing to kill an American citizen because he comes to see his family in the West Bank, or they just do it and didn't cover it up, what do you think they're willing to do to you anywhere? As Israel has repeatedly said that there's no international law that binds them, that they're not bound by these things. They can legislate and act anywhere in the world. They've said it many times over the years. And now they're literally killing Americans if they happen to go. How long until that becomes everywhere? You may think that sounds crazy, guys, but the information, the track record, it's very real. Glenn says Israel repeatedly kills American citizens in the West Bank, using American weapons and American money to do so. But American uber patriots overwhelmingly side with Israel, even when they kill fellow citizens. Now, at least that was the moment before. I think right now, that is not the case. I think there's a lot of Republicans that are finding the courage to call this out. Ryan Grimm highlighting children that were killed getting water. An airstrike, 13 children were slaughtered. This is the 10th. This was pretty widely covered. I don't even want to, I'll show you one of them. Ryan Grimm says Israel has high quality cameras for their targeting, and they know where food is distributed. They knew there were 13 children lined up for food. This massacre by itself would be remembered for decades, if not more, if it happened to American children. There's something seriously wrong with these people right now. Anybody, anywhere who's acting like this is not real. Aaron Mate says, if our elected leaders are so proud to stand with Israel, now there's graphic images below, they should have to campaign alongside video footage of Israel's endless mass murder spree and explain why they believe their constituents have to continue funding it. This video is further evidence of the massacre Israel carried out this afternoon. This was on the 12th. This is yesterday. So there's many of these. The 10th, the 12th, I believe there was another one on children just getting water, which I think is next. Earlier, he says, I wrote about the strike targeting a spot where people were charging their phones, but the video I shared at the time didn't show that clearly. Now, a new video posted 2 hours ago by a friend of mine who lives there does. Starting at 11 seconds, you can see the aftermath of the airstrike. It directly hit a small table where civilians placed their phones to charge, a makeshift lifeline in ongoing devastation. The stools surrounded it where the family managed the charging station, used it, sit, are still visible. Most of the victims are shown in the footage are children, including one on a bicycle. It never leaves me. The fact that anybody is ever allowing this to continue. Horrific. This one's from the 10th. A few seconds show the number of kids who were killed in an airstrike while queuing in the food supplement. Let's call it food supplement massacre. Oh, of course. Twitter won't let it play. Surprise, surprise. You really think that's by accident? Come on, guys. I didn't download it. These things are increasingly difficult to deal with. These are multiple examples of the same thing continuing. Israel forces admit, this is today, after denying all of those things, anytime they came up, no, Hamas lies, human shields. Well, Israel Defense Forces admit technical error after Israeli missile killed 10 people, mostly children, including 6 children, at a water collecting point. So we're showing you food examples. We were showing you phone charging areas, children collecting water, and they literally bomb them to death and go, oops, technical error. Are we talking about a Palantir technical error? Or are we talking about an oops, we shot children technical? I mean, what are we talking about? What's the error here? How can you accidentally murder 6 children with a bomb? I mean, what are we talking about, guys? Mel says, Israel dropped a missile big enough to kill 10 people, 6 of them children, and injure another 17 as they stood in line for water. Their excuse? A technical error. We were actually trying to bomb a single militant standing a few meters away, is what they're claiming. So that's called a crime, guys. I don't care if it's an accident or not. It's despite the fact that their entire track record this whole time proves that it's not an accident. No one does anything about any of this. Now, one of the worst parts of this, which I just think is absolutely insane, is that your government, on top of everything that they know we see, are Trump's administration right now, or just the U.S. government, which is the real point, is giving them $30 million, not the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, the group that's executing children in broad daylight. The one I just showed you shooting at children. The ones I just showed you bombing innocent people. Former Doge official rushed grant to Trump-backed Gaza aid group. That's not what it sounds like. That is the Assad-funded assassin group that's killing people. I mean, the aid example is such a from UNICEF to human rights groups on the ground to innocent Palestinians filming it all. These people are coming up to get a fraction of the food that they might need and maybe getting killed in the process. Everyone's telling you the same story every day. Remember the very first day this started when they screamed about how it was all a lie? And then every single day since they've killed people? How do you not see that? This is what kills me about this. A U.S. State Department official waived 9 mandatory counterterrorism and anti-fraud safeguards to rush $30 million to a Mossad-backed group killing children. That's what just happened. So not only did they just do that terrible thing, but they're circumventing their own laws to keep funding a genocide. It says Jeremy Lewin, a former Doge associate, signed off on an award despite an assessment. So they're giving it as a grant, by the way. Despite the assessment of in a memorandum that the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation's funding plan failed to meet required minimum technical or budgetary standards. So they're breaking the law. It's a group that's committing genocide, funded by Mossad, as well as the fact that they didn't even meet the basic necessities of what they should have to get that funding. But they said, who cares about any of that? It's all just lies anyway, right? We would have funded you regardless, so move it all aside. I mean, there is nothing sacred to these people. They're proving that to you. It says in June 24th action, the memorandum to Lewin was sent by Kenneth Jackson, who, by the way, I found a lot of really weird USA spending connection to that name, but I can't prove it's the same person at the moment. But like weird $50,000 loans for multiple different businesses, like 17 different times. Interesting to look back up to. But it says also a former Doge operative who serves as an acting deputy U.S. Agency for International Development Administrator, USAID. Yeah, that very much still exists. The pair has overseen the agency's dismantling and the merger of its functions into the State Department. You love how they really try to keep stressing dismantle, but if it merged, it didn't go away. Dismantling. It's a complete it's window dressing. As you know from before, it was already basically run by the State Department. So all they did was just remove the lie. They're just now it is just the Rubio Trump government run USAID acting through the State Department for exactly what it was always about: regime change, subterfuge, manipulation. In this case, funding a genocide. Now it says Lewin also overrode 58 objections that USAID staff experts wanted GHF to resolve its application before the funds were approved, according to two sources. So the laws, the lack of real, needed, what do they say? The application forms, the fact that 58 people from the staff said that's not allowed, and they just did anyway. And they fast-tracked it over the top of all of that. Lewin, who runs the State Department's foreign aid program, cleared the funds only 5 days after GHF filed its proposal on June 19th, according to a June 24th action memorandum bearing his signature. Why? Because Israel snapped its fingers. I mean, how else do you see this, guys? There's no logical reason why they would ignore all of that, especially since this food is actually not helping people. They're using this to their own benefit. Now, it says the documents underline the priority the Trump administration has given the GHF despite the group's lack of experience and the killing of hundreds of Palestinians near its aid distribution. Now, yeah, that's a side note we'll bury down on the article, the fact that they're literally murdering people every day. So Donald Trump's administration has fast-tracked $30 million in lieu of in contradiction of the laws, in contradiction of even the process, and rushed it over to a group that is killing people. Just let that really sink in. Now, to finish, here's Marco Rubio showing you as well with his $1 million paycheck coming from AIPAC. Today, I am imposing sanctions, he says, on Francesca Albanese from the United Nations. He says, for her illegitimate and shameful efforts to prompt the ICC action against U.S. officials. And, so calling out for crimes that the world can see and saying that you should be accountable for those crimes. That's desperate, in my opinion. You are trying to attack her because she is focusing on your crimes. Albanese, he says, campaign of political and economic warfare. Economic warfare from the people who are sanctioning literally anybody, and right now, including her. Think about how insane it is for him to sanction her for doing her job and then to accuse her of economic warfare. This is why I'm talking about desperation. I mean, I'm starting to get the real sense that these people are really worried about what's going to happen next. Then he goes, against the United States and Israel will no longer be tolerated. Okay, so he's attacking her. And Tiberius simply says, we all know you're paid by Zionists to betray humanity and support the Nazi genocide, but the more you show yourselves, the more the world will pull away from the U.S. regime and the weaker you'll become. Carry on. Dave DeCamp simply highlights what Donald Trump said about Rubio before this selection process. Sheldon Adelson is looking to give big dollars to Rubio because he feels he can mold him into his perfect little puppet. Don't forget, Adelson also funded Trump. Miriam, but same point. So they're all compromised, in my opinion, but the point is they're willing to call each other out when it suits their immediate interest because they're manipulators. Now, Natasha says, yesterday I met with Francesca Albanese to express Slovenia's appreciation for her dedicated work in defending the rights of Palestinians in the occupied Palestinian territories. That's Gaza, West Bank. Really, all of Israel, if you understand the reality. During her visit to Slovenia, we received news of the sanctions imposed against her by the United States. Slovenia firmly upholds the independence and integrity of UN special procedures, which play a crucial role in promoting accountability and addressing serious human rights violations worldwide. I deeply regret the sanctions imposed on Ms. Albanese and emphasize our continued commitment to international law and to support all those who strive to protect human dignity everywhere. Glenn says, we just interviewed Special Rapporteur Francesca Albanese, one of the planet's most courageous advocates. She is easily, like if we're going to talk about Massey in contrast to the Congress and still have rightfully doubts and concerns about what might, question everything, it's the same point here. She might as well be the Massey in the UN, guys. She is clearly The track record, which is, you know what I care about more than anything, the fact that they follow through what they say, and the track record shows you that they have the principles, they're consistent with their principles. She is easily the most principled person that I'm seeing in this conversation, who has just relentlessly stood her ground with what we can prove is the truth. And that's why weak-willed people like Rubio are going after her, because Israel says so, which is very clear in my opinion. The idea that you're going after her for doing her job, I mean, look, even if you think she's wrong, what she's doing is her job. And so he's going after her like they always do, like Bolton and Pompeo and everybody else attacked their families in the ICC. Said, well, they more than once threatened the families of these workers because they said, what you're doing in Afghanistan is a crime. These people are desperate. He goes, the constant attacks on her for the crime of documenting Israeli abuses culminated this week with sanctions on her imposed by Marco Rubio. I haven't seen the interview, but I'm sure it's good. Now, Trita Parsi comes out and says, and this is really important to think about. Now, whatever you think about Francesca Albanese on the right, even if you think everything they're saying is true, think about the comparison here. The man below is the founder of Al-Qaeda in Syria, the one on the left. That's the one they're currently telling you is the leader of Syria. The U.S. has just taken the sanctions off of him, off of his organization. Al-Qaeda, guys. Let me think about how insane that is to say we're Al-Qaeda. A long time ago, they even started to float the idea that maybe they were somebody who could work with. That's the group they're telling you is responsible for everything we're dealing with. But the reality is, and hopefully we're coming to terms with this, it's an Israeli and U.S. proxy army. That's why you're now seeing them move their sanctions. How long? I mean, guys, it's an interesting time right now. Things that we've been telling you for a very long time based on facts are starting to become self-evident. And now you're going to start to see the Johnny-come-latelys jump in and make it a bombshell. Know that we've been showing you this for a very long time. All of the stuff. At the point, he is somebody they're no longer sanctioning. He is somebody they're working with. The woman on the right, Francesca Albanese, the U.S. has now imposed sanctions on her, telling you that she's a criminal and a terrorist. I think that speaks for itself. David Camp says, hey, Randy Fine. An American from your state of Florida was just murdered by Jewish settlers in the West Bank. Care to comment? Clearly not, because he doesn't care about Americans. Dave DeCamp pointing the story of the Israeli settlers killing Americans. Randy Fine is clearly, like Mast and all the rest, blindly supporting of Israel's interest against Americans, which is every single day. Look at what they're talking about. Now, they love to give lip service to everything American. It's their actions that matter. And the New York Times just called the lynching of an American citizen a clash. You know, you just can't miss what's happening here, guys. Again, if this was an American citizen anywhere else, it wouldn't be covered like that. If it was an Israeli American citizen, it would surely not be covered like that. The fact that it's anything related to Gaza, this is what you get. It doesn't matter that for them that it's a crime, that it's a massive, that this is, you're literally talking about people that just beat them to death. And you're framing it like some kind of an ongoing clash. I mean, it's insulting to your intelligence, guys. Most moral concentration camp in the world. That's what they're building. Oh, and this one's important as well. Just to show you that this is, like I keep talking about, whether it's the U.S. government, the Israeli government, guys, they don't care about any of us. They're doing what they want at the expense of everybody. And this is what we keep talking about. We made this point months ago when they started attacking people that, I think it was, I'm going to forget her name now. The very first, and I forget if she was, I think she was a hostage, not a detainee, since she was the elderly woman, the earliest one. Oh, Lipschitz was her name. She came back, and do you remember what she said? They treated me very kindly, like point blank, that they were kind, they protected me, and she got attacked relentlessly by radical Zionists, by the Israeli government, claiming she was hurting the whole thing. Well, guess what? Every single one of them, other than a few, have said the same thing. Now, this is from the 11th, the Israeli lobby group, the ADL, is falsely alleging that the family of an Israeli captive in Gaza supports the war and is blasted for it. So they're basically saying that, because what they want is this to stop, right? They want their family back, and they know, as everyone's calling out, that Israel is bombing and killing them every single day, Hannibal directive, or that they just don't care. So that's why most Israelis are now saying, stop this, make the deal. We want our families back. And clearly you don't care about them. And so now that this person stands up and says that, the ADL goes after him, goes after their family, and says that you're really working for Gaza. It's just, there's nothing sacred for these people. They're monsters. His name is Yehuda Cohen, whose son, Nimrod, is still captive in Gaza, following the Al-Aqsa flood, has publicly demanded an apology from the ADL CEO after he claimed that the Cohen family supports Gaza. This is so it doesn't matter whether you're on their side or not. If you come out like with Trump, another perfect overlap, and you say that's not what I agree with, you're now the enemy. Now, lastly, 3 points to make. This is a clip of Israel speaking at the UN. And as this person says, anyone who has condemned, who has commented on Palestine and Israel should watch this video. This is how Israel speaks at the United Nations. The slaughter of tens of thousands of Palestinians is, quote, justified by the biblical passage she reads here. God, quote, promised the Jews the land. It's pure Masonic fascism. Here's what she said.
Let me conclude with the most important fact of all. Israel is the ancestral home of the Jewish people, the land about which Ezekiel wrote, "Then say to them, thus says the Lord God, behold, I will take the people of Israel from the nations among which they have gone, and will gather them from all around and bring them to their own land. Am Israel Chai."
What do you think that's going to accomplish? You see, this is just insane fanaticism, guys. This is the equivalent of going in the U.S. Congress and giving a sermon and saying that, God says this way. And sometimes that happens from the Lindsey Grahams of the world, but it's not going to sway arguments in the context of whether the political outcome is what. That's what the UN is doing. We're discussing the political outcome, and she comes in and says, God said, we're in control. It's just a weird, fanatic kind of supremacy. And that is not just about Jewish people in this context. It's Zionism. As we just talked about, Sam Harris, an atheist, admitting to he's a Zionist. There's atheist movements in Israel that are Zionists. They're Christian Zionism. It's very clear what the real issue is here. But just think about how weird that is. And this is my point about this is the overlap of where this goes. The biblical Zionists, or rather specifically, they're more accurately, the religious Zionists in his administration, from Waltz to Besant to Huckabee to Hegseth to Bondi to Noam, they're all very, very openly Zionist. Many of which, like I said, are like religious Zionist level, to like Hegseth or the rest that believe, by the way, as Israel does, that the West needs to be collapsed before the end times can come on, where they will apparently rule the world. How you think that makes sense or how that aligns with America First direction is beyond me. She is in front of a bunch of people in this room, most of which know that they're committing genocide, and her argument is to say, God said. I think that's important. Now, some of the jokes people make about this is Iran can't have a nuclear weapon because they're a radical religious theocracy, right? Well, it's worth reflecting on the fact that maybe that's the case for Iran. I disagree with the way they frame it, but if that is an argument, then why would we allow the United States or anybody else who is very clearly in this direction to have this kind of weaponry? Now, the point is that all of these countries, whatever the current government, have the legal right to all of these things, and that's what ultimately matters. This is Representative Anna Paulina Luna, another Zionist. They wanted him dead. God had other plans. That's just alarming to me. I'm a Christian, guys, but that's a crazy thing. That what they're doing is trying to say that no matter what happens, it's what God wanted. So killing children in Gaza, that's what God wanted. I don't agree with that. At the very least, it's an insane thing to think that you can say you know what God wanted. These people are lunatics, my friends. I said I was not aware we lived in a theocracy. Right? And just so you remember what this means, specifically, a system of government in which priests rule in the name of God or a God. Now, we may not argue that these are priests, but maybe we're in the new, like these are the new priests of our time. Like maybe that's how these Zionists and these technocrats who see themselves as becoming a God. This is not a joke, by the way. Transhumanist overlap. Maybe that's how they see it. It's abstract for some people. The bottom line, we are framing this as God said. How is that not the same thing? And here is the White House. 1 year ago today, Butler, Pennsylvania. I was saved by God to make America great again. I believe that. From the people that you can read their own discussions, their own books, don't actually believe in God. But, maybe they've changed their mind today. Lastly, U.S. Congress applauds their king, a demon wanted by the International Criminal Court in war crimes and genocide. This is now. Netanyahu, for however many times, will walk into Congress and get standing ovations from every single one of them. Even the ones that like to give lip service about how that's not what they support, they'll stand up and cheer. Very big problem there, guys. But so whether we're talking about the theocratic nature of I mean, look, Israel's government is shockingly in that direction. And yet all the claims become about somebody else. Or the idea that, as we can see, there's a very, very alarming biblical Zionist, or rather religious Zionist thread that is worming its way right through this government. And what that means for what they believe, even if you don't believe what they're claiming, they believe these things. They'll act on these things. And if they believe that God says they should destroy Iran because that's what Israel wants, we need to really start reflecting on how real this can get if we let maniacs like that be in power or have any power. So we'll play this clip to finish, which just really needs to sink in for people, I think. The amount of influence it's not just about the fact that it's the world, the reputation of Netanyahu as the person in that room it's what's the word I used the other day? He's reviled. I mean, look in Israel's conversation. Most people in Israel fear him or hate him. Most people in the world have a very similar opinion about this person, arguing that he's created wars over the years just to keep himself out of prison. Many Israelis saying that right now. And yet this guy gets a standing ovation as he's supposed to be arrested by anybody who is aligned with the ICC. That's the U.S. government. They're supposed to arrest him on sight. And every one of them give him a standing ovation. It just needs to show you what's really happening. Now, you can debate whether that means complete control, whether they're in line, or whether the U.S. government just has the same agenda. My opinion is much more than just alignment. No, question me, obviously. Ask whether I'm wrong, look into it for yourself. But I think the facts show very clearly, whether through AIPAC or much, much worse than that, especially with this very alarmingly obvious Epstein overlap, that there's something else that's dictating things. Could be blackmail. Could be the fact that they're just aligned with Zionism. But there's something more happening here. And that's what we're beginning to see. And then it's showing itself in every single thing, not least of which is the obvious point. They're allowing a genocide to continue despite the fact that nobody supports it and everyone sees it. Thank you for continuing to support this platform, guys, because you are making a difference. Like today, more than usual, I'm feeling that way. There's so many bad things happening and so much shifting, but my God, people are starting to call this stuff out. And you need to grab those reins and really continue to, again, not try to form everyone's opinions, but drive it, allow the direction to be something that is objective, right? To where people can disagree and have amicable conversations and stop being guided by partisan madness that I think is clearly being driven by what we're talking about in order to keep us divided, to keep us lost. So this continues in this direction. And I mean, look, there's an obvious endpoint to this, guys. I don't think it's a positive outcome. Call it out. Recognize that you are not alone, that people around you are seeing the same things, and stand up and have the courage to call it out. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate your support. We would not exist without you. And I know it in my heart. We're making a difference every single day just by being here, having this conversation, sharing the information. Everyone in the independent media, the Independent Media Alliance. I mean, we are making a difference right now. Just let that carry with you till the next show. Thank you all. I love you all. Thank you for being here. As always, question everything. Come to your own conclusions. Stay vigilant.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister of the State of Israel.
Members of Congress, I now have the high privilege and distinct honor of presenting to you His Excellency Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel.